So let's get started with Dreamweaver. Adobe Dreamweaver CS6 is a web development tool that lets you create dynamic web pages containing text, images, hyperlinks, animations, sounds, video, and interactive elements. You can use Dreamweaver to create individual web pages or complex websites consisting of many web pages. Now, just as a first definition, we're going to talk about a website as a group of related web pages that are linked together and share a common interface and design. Dreamweaver lets you create these design elements such as text, forms, rollover images, and interactive buttons, or even import elements from other software programs. You can also save Dreamweaver files in different file formats including XHTML, HTML, JavaScript, CSS, or XML, just to name a few. XHTML is the acronym for Extendable Hypertext Markup Language, and it's the current standard language used to create web pages. However, we're seeing more and more of what's called HTML5. That's the current hypertext markup language that we're using in Dreamweaver. So you use a web browser to view the web pages on the internet, and the web browser is just programs such as Microsoft Internet Explorer, Google Chrome, Apple Safari, Mozilla Firefox are just a few. Now, using the Dreamweaver tools, you can create a robust website. And it has an impressive number of tools that help us do this. Using these design tools, we can create dynamic and interactive web pages without even having to ever write a word of code. If you prefer to write code, Dreamweaver can make it easy for you to enter and edit that as well. It also contains organizational tools that can help us work with a team of people to create a website if that's the case. Either way, you're going to use what we call the Files panel to create folders and organize and store the various files for your website, and to add pages to your website. Now, the document window is the main thing that you're going to see in the Dreamweaver program when you create those web pages. When you first start Dreamweaver, you're just going to see the document workspace, and that's the middle where you create the work pages. Now, we also have a menu bar or the application bar, which is located above that document window, and that includes menu names, the workspace switcher, and other application commands. You can see that the workspace switcher is very similar to what we just identified in Adobe Bridge. So then the document toolbar will contain any kind of buttons and drop-down menus that you can use to change your current work mode, check your browser compatibility, preview the web page, debug the web page, choose visual aids, or view the file management options. The live view will display an open document as if you were viewing it in a web browser, and a standard toolbar will contain the buttons you can use to execute your frequently used commands, and those are also going to be available on the File and the Edit menus. That screen, which includes all the menus, panels, buttons, inspectors, and panes that you use to create and maintain websites, is designed to give you easy access to everything you need to create your web page. Now, when we're looking at the startup mode, you're going to basically be focusing mostly on this large area in the Dreamweaver program where you can create and edit your web pages. The document toolbar is going to be used most frequently when you're going through and inserting different kinds of graphical items into your web page. We have some other things that are more advanced options, and that's going to be these things called the style rendering toolbar, the standard toolbar, the related files toolbar, and the coding toolbar. Those toolbars don't appear by default. You have to turn these on because they're more advanced features. And they contain buttons that you can use to execute frequently used commands that are available on the File and Edit menus. The Style Rendering toolbar will contain things that you can use to display the data for different platforms, such as a cell phone or a television. And you can also display or hide the Document Standard and Style Rendering toolbars by right-clicking on an empty area of the open toolbar and then clicking the toolbar name you wish to display or hide. You can also get there by going to the View and then down to the Toolbars menu. Now, what we have here is a panel, and that's just going to be a tabbed window that displays the information on a particular topic or that contains related commands. You can see that we have several different panels groups. And on our Dreamweaver web space, we have a view that is a particular way of displaying the web content. A doc is going to be a collection of panels or panel groups, and we're going to be able to insert and move these panels to however you would like to have them configured. Now, at the time when you first open up the Dreamweaver workspace, you're going to see that the code's not visible unless we go into Code View, which is this button on the far left, or Split View, which will give us our Dreamweaver workspace on the right and then the Code View on the left. The Property Inspector, sometimes referred to as the Properties pane, is located at the bottom of the Dreamweaver window. And this is going to let us view and change the properties or characteristics of whatever object we currently have selected. It's going to be context sensitive, which means it will change according to what we select in our document window. And the status bar is located below that document window on the left side, and it displays the tag selector. This is going to show the HTML tags that we're currently working on that are in the insertion point of the code. By clicking on the right side of the display and grabbing that select tool, we can use that to edit our page. The hand tool is used for panning. The zoom tool is used for magnifying. When we're looking at the different groups, we have what are called panels, and these are just these tabbed windows here that display information on a particular topic. When they're grouped together like this, it's called a doc, and it's basically just a collection of different panel groups. You can move your docs around by clicking on this top bar here and then just moving it into whatever position you would like. Now, when you're exploring the workspace, you have up here the design view, which is going to show you exactly the pages that would appear in a browser, and it's primarily used for designing and creating web pages. Whereas code view can be displayed by clicking on this code button, and that will actually show you your HTML code. That's going to show you that underlying HTML that basically drives the web page, and that's how you can read or edit that underlying code if you have some kind of a bug or something that's not displaying the way that you would expect it to. You can also split the code view to enable you to work on two different sections of code at once. So when you change to split code view, you click on the view on the menu bar and then split code. Now, showing code and design views is a combination of the code view and design view, and it's the best for debugging or correcting errors because you can immediately see how the code modifications are going to change the appearance of the web page. And the view buttons are located on the document toolbar. If you want to switch to the same view for all your open documents, you can hold down the Control key in Windows or the Control key in Mac while you click a view button. Now, a view is just going to display the page content. And when you're working in Dreamweaver, you're only ever going to have those three different views: code, split, design, or live. Now, when we're talking about web pages, the first thing that you're going to want to know is that that first page is going to be called a home page. This is what's going to appear when users go to a website. Now, we talked about in the previous module a little bit about how your browser sends a request to the web server, and then the web server sends those files back. Well, the way that your web server knows what page is the home page is because they're always, always, always named index.html. Now, index is basically that code to the web server that is the forward-facing web page that you want to show up when you first open the website. So that's going to set the look and feel of your entire website, and it's going to direct the users to the rest of the pages in your website. Now, if you'd like to see what your web page is going to look like in the browser, you can go and look to the web elements, which are going to be very similar to the way they appear on the web, but not exactly. So to get a better idea of how it's going to look, you can use the Switch Design View to the Live View button on the document toolbar. That's going to cause the open document to appear as it would in a browser with all the interactive elements active and functioning. And if you're viewing the page in Live View, this shows the Live View source, and the Code View button will appear to the right of the Switch Design View. This is going to display the code as read-only, so you're not going to be able to modify that without exiting the Show the Live View Source and Code View. And that's going to be highlighted in yellow, and it will allow you to see the dynamic changes in the code while you interact with the content on the page. Now, when the Switch Design View to Live View button is active, the Shows the Live View Source and the Code View button can be toggled on or off, and the Live View won't be active. Now, you're going to get frustrated if you leave that on because you're not going to be able to edit anything on your website because, again, you're in a read-only mode at this point. So when you click the Live View button at the first time, you might see a message that you need to install like a Flash plugin or something like that, because those are going to be third-party pieces of software that's going to make your page function correctly. And so you're going to be able to download that plugin and then view your page in the Live View. So web pages can be pretty simple and designed primarily with text, or they can be really media rich with images, sound, movies, all sorts of different kind of links and banners, menu bars, and really rich content here. What we see is common web page elements as shown on the graphic here, and what we can do is when opening Dreamweaver, we can create a new website, a new web page, or even open an existing website or web page. Now that first page that appears, again, is called your home page, and that's going to set the look and feel of the entire website. So in this example, you're going to want the look and feel of all this to have the same background, the same kind of context, the same imagery, colors, font, and so forth. That's going to give our users a consistent look and feel throughout the website so that they know where they are and they can navigate easily. Now, if you want to view the basic web page elements, you can look at a lot of the different areas here with like images, sound, movies, anything like that. And what we're looking at here is one that has text and graphics that work together to create a simple and attractive page. Now, most information on a web page is presented in the form of text, as you can see here. You can type the text directly onto a web page in Dreamweaver, or you can import it if you want to create it in like Microsoft Word or something like that. Now, what you can do is use the property inspector to format the text so that it's attractive and easy to read, and then the text should be short and to the point. So you want to be concise here so that you can engage your users. You don't want to have them lose interest and leave the site. So what we can see as common features on this web page are the search feature up here at the top right. Then we have a banner image, which is this part here. The next part down is links to different pages in the website. This is also known as the navigation bar. We have contact information, social networking links, links to any kind of support pages that we may have, some images here to add some dynamic content, and then a nice little graphic in the center portion of the page. So a lot of web pages use what we call hyperlinks. Most people just refer to these as links, and these are going to be images or text elements on a web page that users are going to click to display another location on the page, another web page on the same website, or a web page on a different website. Now, images can add that visual interest to a web page, but you want to be really careful with it because less can be more with images. Too many images is going to cause your page not only to load really slowly and discourage users from wanting to sit there and wait for it to load, but many pages are going to have banners. And that's going to be the image that appears across the top or down the side of the screen that can incorporate a company's logo, your contact information, or links to other pages in the site with your navigation bar. Now, you definitely want to use images when appropriate to add that visual interest, but you don't want them to be conflicting, confusing, or too much for the user. We can do what's called an image map, and that's going to be an image that's divided into sections, which is going to basically be a link. And that way, the menu bars and other internal links on your pages can be used as a navigation structure. So menu bars or navigation bars will contain multiple links that are usually organized in a row or a column. And they're going to be basically put through as an image map so that people can go to any place in the website and have that consistent link at the top to navigate back to where they were before, or navigate on to something else. We also have what is called rich media content. Now, that's a comprehensive term that's going to refer to any kind of attractive or engaging image. Now, any kind of interactive elements, video, or animations is going to be created probably outside of Dreamweaver, but then you can import it in. So while some of this rich media content can be developed in Dreamweaver, most of it is going to be created with other programs such as Adobe Flash, Fireworks, Photoshop, or Illustrator, and then imported back into Dreamweaver for use on your web page. Now, Dreamweaver also has an excellent help feature that's comprehensive and easy to use. When questions or problems arise, you can use the commands on the Help menu to help you find the answers you need. By clicking in the Dreamweaver Help command, it will open up the Help page, which contains a list of topics and subtopics by category. The Help feature in Dreamweaver is based on Adobe Air technology. Now, that's a product used for developing content that can be delivered with a browser or as a desktop application. The search text box at the top of your window will let you enter a keyword to search for a specific topic. Context-specific help can be accessed by clicking the Help button on the Property Inspector. Creating a website is a complex process. It can often involve a large team of people working various roles to ensure that the website contains accurate information, looks good, and works smoothly. But sometimes the phases in website development is done solely by just a web developer. You want to develop your plan, create the basic structure, create the content, then test that content, go back and modify and test again, and then publish the content. So when you want to plan for your website, planning is really probably the most important part of any successful project. It's going to be an essential part of creating your website, and it should be a continuous process that will overlap the subsequent phases. To start planning your website, you need to create a checklist of questions and answers about your site. For example, what are your goals for the site? Who's the audience that you want to target? Teenagers, children, sports enthusiasts, senior citizens. You need to think about who's this going to be made for and how you can design the site to appeal to that specific target audience. You want to think about what kind of content is appropriate for your target audience and what kind of content is relevant to the purpose of the website. Are you selling something? Are you giving it for information? Is it education? Is it for games? Anything that you have here, the more questions that you can answer, the more prepared you're going to be when you begin the developmental phase. And because of the public demand for up-to-date information, your plan should include not just how to get the site up and running, but also how you're going to keep it current. So here are some of the questions that we need to answer during the planning phase for almost any type of website. From this checklist, you can see that you can create a statement of purpose and a scope, a timeline, due dates, a budget, a task list, work assignments, and a list of resources needed. You should also include a list of deliverables such as page prototypes and art for approval. The due dates for each deliverable should also be included on your timeline. So that's the first thing that you're going to want to do is go through this planning checklist and identify the answers for all of these questions. Once we complete the planning phase, we need to determine the structure of our website by creating what we call a wireframe. Now, that's sometimes referred to as a storyboard, and basically all it is an illustration that will represent every page in your website. So very similar to a flowchart or organization chart, a wireframe will show the relationship of each page in the website to the other pages. They also show how each page element should be placed on each page. And it's helpful when you're planning your website because it allows you to visualize how each page in the site is going to link to each other. They're also an important tool to help the client see how pages are going to look and work together, and to make sure that the client will approve what you want to do and any other interested stakeholders before the site construction actually begins. So that'll save you a lot of rework. Now, wireframes range from very simple, known as low-fidelity wireframes, and it can also be an interactive and multi-dimensional wireframe known as a hi-fi wireframe. You can create these with just a pen and paper or by using a graphics program on a computer such as Illustrator, Fireworks, or PowerPoint. You can create more complex wireframes that simulate the site and basically give your client a look and feel of what it's going to be like once it's interactive. You can also show your navigation, user interaction, and things such as Oversight, PhotoShare, Visio, or Proto. The basic wireframe shown in Figure 14 shows all of the striped umbrella web pages that you're going to create in your textbook. you can see that the home page appears at the very top of the wireframe. This means that it's going to be your index page, or the first page that the user is going to hit. That's why it's labeled with 0. You can then see the order of the subsequent web pages underneath that. Now the home page is going to be called the parent page because it's at a higher level in this web hierarchy, and it has pages that are linked to it. So the pages below it are called the child pages. So as an example, the activities page, which is a child page to the home page, is also a parent page to the cruising and fishing page. You can refer to this wireframe as you create the actual links in Dreamweaver. And for more detailed wireframes, you can also include all the document names, images, text files, and link information. You're going to want to use your wireframe as your guide to develop this site and make sure that you follow the planned site structure. Now, in addition to creating a wireframe for your site, you should also create a folder hierarchy on your computer for all the files that will be used on the site. You want to start this by creating a folder for the site with a descriptive name that makes sense to you, such as the name of the company, and then this folder is going to be known as a local site folder or a root folder. This is going to store all the pages or HTML files for your website. Traditionally, this folder has been called the root folder because people still use that term, and in this book we're going to call it the local site folder, so know that we're using the same, or that it's the same thing there. It's just basically going to store all the pages and HTML files and associated things that you need to drive your website. So we want to create a subfolder in our root folder or the local site folder called assets or images. Either way, it doesn't really matter what you want to call it, whatever makes sense to you. And then you're going to store all your files that are not HTML pages, such as images, sound links, videos, that sort of thing. So you should avoid using spaces, special characters, or uppercase characters in your folder names, and that's just to ensure that your files can be read and linked successfully on all web servers, whether they're Windows-based or Unix-based or some other kind of an OS. So you want to try to just make sure that you use an underscore instead of a space and lowercase characters. Now, after you create the local site folder, you're ready to set up your website. And when you set it up, you're going to use the Dreamweaver Site Setup dialog box to assign your site a name and specify the local site folder. After you've set that up, you can make it appear in the File panel by managing your website's files and folders. And using the File panel to manage your files will ensure that the site links work correctly when the website is published to the live web. You can also use the Files panel to add or delete pages. So when you create the web pages and collect the page content, it's going to really get into the fun part of this. What we're looking at is after we create the wireframe, you're going to obtain your approval, set up your site, and then you're going to have to start gathering the files that you need to create your web pages, including text, images, buttons, video, or animations. Now, as we said before, some of these you're going to import from other software programs, and some you're going to create in Dreamweaver. So, for example, you can create text in a word processing program like Microsoft Word and then import or paste it into Dreamweaver. But you can also create and format that text right there in Dreamweaver, whatever you like doing better. So images, tables, colors, and horizontal rules all contribute to making a page attractive and interesting. But each one of these will increase the file size, which means it's going to take longer to download. So once all the pages are completed, you need to test the site and make sure that it works. And it's important to test this using different browsers because it's going to look different on each one based on the code. So we need to work to test it and make sure that everything looks good across several browsers. The four most common browsers are Microsoft Internet Explorer, Mozilla Firefox, Google Chrome, and Apple Safari. You're going to want to use different versions of each of these browsers because older versions may not support the latest web technology, and you also want to test it using a variety of screen size. So some users may have small monitors while others may have a really large high-resolution monitor. You can also consider using a connection that will give you an accurate download time if somebody's not on a high-speed or DSL connection. Now, although most people do use cable modems or DSL today, in rural areas, they still have slower dial-up modems, so you want to make sure that you account for this when you're designing for a global audience. Now, testing is a continuous process, and you should always allocate plenty of time to do it. Now, when you test something, you're going to be able to see what you want to modify. So after you create the website, you're probably going to find that you're going to need to keep making changes to it, especially when information on the site needs to be updated. So each time you make a change, such as adding a new button or an image to a page, you should test the site again. Modifying and testing the pages in a website is an ongoing process, and you're going to want to make sure that you will always test it before you ever publish it to the web. So publishing a website refers to the process of transferring all the files for the site to a web server. And that's going to be the computer that's connected to the internet with an IP or Internet Protocol address so that it's available for viewing on the internet. Now, the website must be published so that the internet users can view it. And there's several options for publishing a website. For instance, many internet service providers or ISPs provide space on their servers for customers to publish websites. And some commercial websites provide limited free space for their users. Although publishing happens at the end of the process, it's a good idea to set up web server access in the planning phase. And this you can do with the Files panel to transfer your files using the Dreamweaver's FTP capability. That stands for File Transfer Protocol, and it's the process of uploading and downloading files to and from a remote site. Now, when you're working with a team, it's essential that you define clear goals for the project and a list of objectives to accomplish those goals. Your plan should be finalized after conferring with both the clients and your other team members to make sure that you have a purpose, a scope, and objectives which are clear to everyone. You want to establish the deliverables or products that are going to be provided to the client as the product completion, such as new pages or graphic elements, and you're going to want to have the timeline for their delivery. And then you're going to want to present these pages at strategic times in the development process to your team members and to your clients for feedback and evaluation. Now, you're going to want to analyze all the feedback objectively, incorporating both the positive and the negative comments to help you make improvements to your website and meet the client's expectations and goals. A common pitfall in the team management is what we call scope creep. And this is when you make impromptu changes or additions to a project without corresponding increases in the schedule or the budget. So you're going to want to make sure that you have proper project control and communication between the team members and clients to minimize this scope creep and achieve successful and timely completion of your projects. So when you create a website, it's important to consider how your users are going to navigate from page to page within the site. So a menu bar or navigation bar is a critical tool for moving around your website, and it's important that all the text, buttons, and icons used in a menu bar have a consistent look across your pages. So after setting up a website, we need to create folders to organize the files that will make up the site, and creating a folder called Assets is a good beginning. Now, there's nothing magic about the word assets. We just want to name the folder something that makes sense to us, as long as we follow the proper folder naming conventions, such as avoiding the use of spaces and capitals. Now, you can use your Assets folder to store all your non-HTML files, such as images or sound files. And many designers name this images because that's usually what most of your non-HTML files are going to be. Now, after you create this folder, it's a good idea to set it as a default location to store the website images, and that will save you a step when you import new images into your website. If you're doing a complex website, you might have many different types of files, so you might want to create subfolders within the Assets folder for each type of file. For instance, within that folder, you could create subfolders in text, images, videos, or sounds. Now, when you want to create your home page, you want to remember that this is the first page that users are going to see when they visit your website, and they contain many other pages and links all back to the home page. So the home page file name has to be index.html or default.html. Now, websites can be as simple as one page, or your website might contain hundreds of pages. But when you create the website, you can add the pages and specify where they should be placed in the website folder structure in the local site folder. Once you add the name and the pages in the website, you can then add the content to the page, such as text and graphics. Now, one method is to add as many blank pages as you think you're going to need in the beginning based on your wireframe, rather than adding them one at a time with all the content in place. Now, the reason people like to do this is because it enables you to set up the navigation structure of the website at the very beginning of the developmental process, and then each page is going to be linked to the others. When you're satisfied with the overall structure, you can then add the content to each page, and it's strictly really a personal preference. You can choose to add and link pages as you create them, and that's going to work just fine too. So you have the choice of several default document types that you can generate when you create new HTML pages. Now, your default document type is going to be designated in the Preferences dialog box. An XHTML 1.0 transitional is usually the default document type when you install Dreamweaver, but you can change that to HTML5 or any other document type that you wish. But it's important to understand the terminology, and then the pages are still called HTML pages, and the file extension is still HTML. But the document type is going to be XHTML 1.0 transitional. So you're going to see HTML5 as our standard document type for the files we create in each lesson in our textbook, but don't let that throw you, it's still based off of the same kind of code. You can also convert existing HTML documents into XHTML compliant documents. And you do this by opening an existing HTML document, clicking File, point to Convert, and then choose the XHTML document type option. So you see that on the bottom right-hand side of your screen in Dreamweaver, you have that Files panel. This is really useful for file management, and you should use it to add, delete, move, or rename files and folders in your website. It's really important you perform these file maintenance tasks in the File panel rather than on Windows Explorer or in the Finder on the Mac. Now, that's because if you work outside of Dreamweaver, such as in Windows Explorer, you can cause linking errors. And you can't take advantage of some of the simple yet powerful tools that Dreamweaver will give you for site management features. So you want to use that Files panel for anything you do related to the file management activities. Now, you might choose to use Windows Explorer to create a local site folder or to move or copy a local site folder from a website to another location for backup. But if you move or copy the local site folder to a new location, all of your site things are going to have to be reset up and all of your links are going to have to be rechecked, because you're going to see in Lesson 3 that setting up a site isn't really difficult, but it's going to require you to understand where these files are housed and the relationship between the files and the links. So if you're using Dreamweaver on multiple computers, you're going to want to make sure that you set up your sites the first time you change to a different computer. So as we previously identified, the process of developing a web page requires a lot of thought and planning. And besides developing the page content, you also need to write the descriptive head content. Head content doesn't appear on the page, but it's in your HTML code, and it's going to contain information that the search engines use to help users find your website. You're going to choose the page background and text colors, and then you're going to add your page content, format it, and then add links to let your users navigate between the site pages. Finally, to ensure that all your links work correctly and are current, you're going to test it regularly. Chapter 2 is going to basically take us through all the steps that we need to do for developing a web page. So as we've identified, the process of developing a web page requires a lot of thought and planning. So besides developing the page content, you also need to write descriptive head content, and that doesn't appear on the page in the HTML code, but it contains information search engines use to help users find your website, and we're going to talk a little bit about that in this chapter. Next, you're going to want to choose your page background and text colors. Then you're going to want to add the page content, format it attractively, add links to let users navigate between the site pages, and finally, you're going to want to ensure that all your links work correctly and are current, and you're going to want to test that regularly. Now, when we're talking about page layout, there's a few things that we want to consider as guidelines before developing our web page. We want to use white space efficiently. So this basically means that you don't want it to be cluttered and so difficult for your user to be able to appreciate the individual pieces. Too many text blocks, links, animations, or images can be really distracting, so you need to consider leaving white space on each page. So white space doesn't necessarily need to be white, but it's an area on the page that doesn't have any content. You want to limit your media elements because too many of these can not only be distractions, but it can also really slow down how long it takes your web page to load. And users might get frustrated and just leave the site before even looking at the home page before it loads entirely. So use those media elements only if they serve a purpose. You want to keep it simple because the simplest websites are the most appealing. Just think of an example like Craigslist. They're also the easiest to create and maintain, and they're also usually the easiest to use. So a simple, well-designed site that works well is going to be far superior to a complex one that contains errors. You want to use an intuitive navigation structure, and what this means is that you want to make sure that your site's navigation is easy for the users to always know where they are in the site and to be able to easily find their way back to the home page. You don't want your users to get lost because they might leave the site rather than struggle to find their way around. So you want to make sure that the navigation structure is really easy and obvious. You also want to apply a consistent theme, and that helps give your pages a consistent appearance, and then also making elements that relate to each other so that, things like using consistent font, consistent color, placement of the navigation links, and overall page design will give it this unified look. That's going to promote greater ease of use and accessibility. And we have things such as style sheets and pre-developed page layouts called templates that can make this much easier. So let's get into Chapter 2 and developing a web page. So some of the tools that we're going to use in this portion is in the code. So you're going to want to make sure that you're working in either the split design or the code design in this section. We're going to talk a little bit about what we call head content and then the body. A web page is basically going to be composed of these two distinct sections. The head content is going to include the page title that will appear in your title bar on the browser and some important page elements that we call meta tags, and those aren't going to be visible in the browser. But meta tags are HTML code that include the information about the page, such as keywords and descriptions, and these are read by screen readers for users who have visual impairments. But keywords are also words that relate to the content of the website, whereas your description is a short paragraph that describes the content and features of the website. So for an example, in our striped umbrella website that we use in the book, you might want to use keywords such as beach and resort. Those are going to be appropriate for this website, and search engines will be able to find the pages by matching the title, keywords, and description of the head content. So when a search is conducted by a user, let's say they go to Google, they type in the word resort, and based on the HTML content in our header, it will pull up the striped umbrella. Now, obviously, it's a lot more complex than that. The algorithms are very advanced, but you want to have that HTML code in there that gives your users information about the page, such as the keyword and description at the very least. Now, the second part there is the body, and that's the part of the page that will appear in the browser window. It contains all your page content that's going to be visible to your users, such as your text, your images, and your links. But don't confuse your page titles with file names. This can be really confusing because, as we talked about before, we always want to name our homepage index.html or default.html. But that's not what we want to be displayed to the user at the top of their browser when they load our web page. Usually that's going to be like the title of your corporation or a really short description of what your website's about. So in the case of the striped umbrella, that's what we would put in the title is the striped umbrella, even though the web file name is going to be called index.html. So this gets into talking a little bit about what we want to do when we're setting our web page properties. So when we create a web page, one of the first design decisions that you should make is to choose the properties that will control the way the page appears in the browser. So you're going to want to think of things like background color, which is going to be the color that fills the entire page on the back. And it should complement the colors that you're going to use for text, links, and images on the page. You're going to see sometimes the backgrounds or images that they use either for the entire page or part of the page. And this can also be a cascading style sheet or CSS layout block. you're going to see that a CSS layout block in a section of a web page is defined and formatted using what we call cascading style sheet code. And that's a set of formatting characteristics that we can apply to text, links, and other page objects. We're going to learn more about that in Chapter 6 when we use the Page Properties dialog box. But right now, what we're going to do is use the Dreamweaver default features, which is automatically going to create a style that will modify the body tag to include the properties that we add. So a strong contrast between the text color and the background color will make it easier for users to read your text. So that's why you see that a lot of books and things are written with black text on a white background, because that contrast makes it very easy for our eyes to read it. So one of the web content accessibility guidelines is to make sure that you use contrast to make it easier for users to see the content, including separating foreground from background. So you can choose a light background color with dark text, like the white and black I just identified, or you can do a dark background color with light text, either way. But a white background with dark text, even though it's not really exciting, it does provide really good contrast, and it usually is the easiest to read for most users. Another design decision that you need to make is whether to change the default font and the default link colors. These are going to be the colors used by the browser to display your text links and visited links, and the default color for unvisited links, which that's the ones that the user haven't checked yet, and that's usually going to be that web color of blue. Now, you can change that to anything you want, but you want to make sure that if you do change that color, that you identify it as a link and make it easy for your users to understand it as still a link, even though it's a different color. Now you can change the background color, text, and link colors using the color picker in the Page Properties dialog box. You can also choose colors from one of the 5 Dreamweaver color palettes as shown in Figure 1. So here we have a diagram of the head content and setting page properties toolbar. You can see that in the title we have typed in the stripe umbrella, and that's going to be the title text box. You can see here again where I was talking about not getting confused about the file name, which is index.html as shown in Dreamweaver, versus the title, which is the striped umbrella, and that is going to be what's going to show in your browser. So here we have the meta icon, which is what we're going to click to get to our code, and then the title icon, which we're going to click to put this in. The CSS icon is where we're going to make those formatting changes, and this is all going to be considered the head content section. So again, the keywords are going to be any words that relate to the content of your website, whereas your description is going to be that paragraph that describes the content and the features of your website. So some examples of what we could come up with for the striped umbrella is things like the title itself, the striped umbrella, beach resort, spa, the location, which is Fort Eugene, Florida, the general area, which is the Gulf of Mexico, some of the activities that they do, such as fishing, golfing, or cruises. You want to put as many keywords in here as you can think of that are going to be identifiable and relevant to your website. So as we spoke about before, the body is the part of the web page that appears in the browser window, where the background color is the part that fills the entire page, and it should complement the colors used for text. Whereas your CSS layout block is a section of the web page that's defined and formatted using what we call cascading style sheets. And that's just going to be a set of formatting characteristics that we apply to text, links, and other page content. So when we're thinking about choosing these colors, one of the things that you want to think of is that not all your users are going to have perfect vision or hearing or the full use of both their hands. So this is what we're talking about when we're saying we want to make our pages accessible. There's several techniques that you can use to ensure that your website is accessible to individuals with disabilities. These techniques include using text alternatives for any non-text content, basically making it readable and understandable and providing ways to help users navigate through the site easily. Now, Adobe will provide a lot of information about the website compliance with Section 508 accessibility guidelines. But for more information, you can visit the Adobe website and you will find suggestions for creating accessible websites, such as an explanation of Section 508 and information on how people with disabilities use assistive devices to navigate the internet. So if you're designing for that target audience, you can take all of these into consideration. The W3C also provides web content accessibility guidelines as the standard for designing sites that are accessible to all users. And the levels of accessibility are grouped into 3 priority level checkpoints. Now, all websites must complete all of the priority 1 checkpoints, such as providing a text equivalent for every non-text element, and these guidelines are published at w3.org. Now, to read the rationale behind creating accessible sites, you can go to webaim.org, and that will give you information about the POUR principle, or putting people at the center of the process. This is what really drives making a website accessible, and it has some free accessibility evaluation tools. One of those is called WAVE, and that stands for the Web Accessibility Evaluation Tool. And it's really simple to use. All you need to do is type in the URL or upload a file to it and hit test, and it will give you the accessibility rating. So we talked a little bit about the default font and default link colors. Now, a lot of you are going to recognize this just from your own web browsing experience, but you need to understand that if you want to change the default font and link colors, you're going to have to make sure that it's really obvious to your users that these are links. Another design decision is basically what color you want the default color for those unvisited links or the links that the user has not clicked yet. This is normally blue, and unvisited links are usually simply just called links. Now, the default color for visited links or links that have been clicked is purple, and you can change the background color, text, or link colors using the color picker in the Page Properties dialog box. You can choose colors from one of the 5 Dreamweaver color palettes, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. Now, again, if you choose a background color such as purple, you're going to want to make sure that you change your visited links color from purple, because it may not be contrasting enough for the user to be able to see it. That text might disappear visually on the screen. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about what kind of default font, default link colors, background colors, and text colors you're going to use on your page. Now, color really conveys information differently. Before 1994, colors appeared differently on different types of computers. There were differences in the way that the browsers displayed them, but there were also a lot of differences in the types of monitors that people used. So, in '94, Netscape developed the first web-safe color palette. And that's basically just a set of colors that appear consistently in all browsers and on the Mac, Windows, and Unix platforms. So the evolution of video cards has really made this pretty irrelevant today, but there's still people out there that have old systems and things that can identify like HD screens or mobile devices or plasma screens, which are going to display that color a little bit differently. So you still want to make sure that you're using appropriate colors because it's still an important factor in creating accessible web pages. So be sure to use only colors that provide good contrast on your web pages. And Dreamweaver has 2 web-safe color palettes. This one shown here is what we call the color cubes. And then we also have continuous tone, as you can see in the drop-down menu shown here. Now, the color cubes is going to be that 216 web-safe colors, and it's going to be the default color palette. If you want to choose a different color palette, you can open the color picker and find this different ranges of colors in there with the various dialog boxes. Now, when you're doing that, though, you need to keep in mind that the WCAG guideline states that color should never be the only visual means of conveying information. So you can't refer to a page object solely by the color. Like if you have a red box, you can't refer to it as just the red box. You need to put in some more descriptions there and refer to it in different ways. What you're going to see here is that each color is assigned what we call a hexadecimal RGB value. This is going to be the value that represents the amount of red, green, and blue that's present in the color. For example, white, which is made of equal parts of red, green, and blue, the hexadecimal value is going to be FFF. This is also called an RGB triplet in hexadecimal format, or hex triplet. Each pair of characteristics in the hexadecimal value will represent the red, green, and blue values. So the hexadecimal number system is based off of 16. And because of that, an A will represent the number 10 in the number system, and F will represent the number 15. So you can calculate the hexadecimal value by entering the code in the form of a shorthand that will shorten the 6 characters to 3. So when you're doing white, which is FFF, you can just type in those first 3 colors, or the first 3 characters, FFF, and you'll still get white. If you have something such as 0066cc, you can type that in as 06C and get the same value. The color is always going to be preceded by a pound sign, so if you switch to your code view, you're going to see that that's how your colors are identified, as pound and then the hexadecimal value. Now, if you don't like the color you choose, you can click on the default color button, which is this little button here with the slash going through it. Or in the color picker, you can just go back to the default. But you have to remember that all browsers are going to apply the same default colors for page backgrounds. Now that we've covered some of the basics of website design and development, we're ready to get started with making our web page. For this, I'm going to be using Adobe Dreamweaver CS6, and I'm also going to be demonstrating the principles that we talk about using the TripSmart website. This is all additional content that you can download from the book's website. So we're here in the Dreamweaver startup page. What I'm going to do is create a new Dreamweaver site. So I'm going to click on this quick start button here. It's going to give me a prompt for what I want to name this site. So this is just going to be the familiar name for me as the web developer to know what I'm working on. It doesn't have to be case sensitive or spaces, but the actual titles in the files will have to be. So I'm going to just go ahead and name this one TripSmart. Now, I have a local site folder path here, and you can see that right now it's defaulted out. I'm going to click on the folder to browse. What I've done is I've put my Chapter 1 files downloaded from the book's website onto my desktop for easy access and use. So I'm going to go into my Chapter 1 files and use my TripSmart folder here as my root site folder. I'm going to go ahead and open that and then click the select button to tell Dreamweaver that the TripSmart folder on my desktop is going to be the root site folder for my work. This is also where we were talking about setting up your assets folder. You notice that when you download these files from the web, it automatically comes in a certain structure. You click on the little drop-down tab here to open up your advanced settings and then go to local info. Here you have an area for the default images folder. We can click on the file icon to browse again, and you can see that now, since I've defined TripSmart as my local root folder, it's automatically going to that location. I can then click Assets to tell the Dreamweaver that this is where I want all my assets to be stored and all my links to the assets to be relative to that path. Go ahead and click Save. It's going to cache out, and you can see that now we have all those files over here in our file pane, and TripSmart is shown as our local view of the root folder here. Now I can also expand on my assets folder, and you can see that I have a JPEG file in this assets folder as downloaded from the web. I'm going to go ahead and open up my index page at this time to work on it and put in some of those features that we've been talking about. This is my TripSmart index page. This is also known as the home page or the landing page for the website. You can see that at this time, we just have a little bit of information, such as a banner image, some navigation links here that haven't been set up as links yet, and some content on our main page. I'm currently in the split design view, so I have my code over here to the left, with my design as it's going to show up in the web on the right. You can go to normal code view, split view, or design view to see what this is going to look like when you have it on the web page. I like working in split view because what it does is it allows me to see my code and then the design implications of that code all at the same time. So I'm basically learning how to do the HTML while using the GUI features of Dreamweaver. So we talked a little bit about a page title. You can see that the title is actually already in here as Trip Smart, the smart way to, and then it cuts off a little bit, but we can go over here to our code and see title on line 5 is Trip Smart, the smart way to go. So we don't need to edit our title at this time, but if we wanted to, let's say that we wanted to put in the smart way to go and get there. You can see that now when I click on that, this is some of that code that's going to be in that header content, so it's not going to actually change anything on the display of my web page. However, it does change the title in my code. So the next thing that we want to do is make sure that we have some keywords put in here so that when the web searches this, it's going to be able to find some of the things that relate to our website. So one of the things that we're going to want to do is make sure that we're deciding what kind of content we want to include and how to arrange each element on the page. We have to design the content with our target audience in mind. So we need to think about the age group, what reading level is appropriate, should we use formal or informal tones. Keep in mind when entering keywords and descriptions that that's what the search engine is going to use to find pages based on the search terms that a user enters. So it's really important to try to anticipate the search terms that our potential customers are going to use and include these words in a keyword, description, and title. Many search engines are going to display the page titles and descriptions in their search results, so you want this to make sense. You also want to make sure that you list the most important keywords first, and we want to keep our keywords and descriptions short and concise to ensure that all the search engines will include our site. So to choose effective keywords, many designers use focus groups to learn which words potential customers or clients might use. And it's basically a marketing tool that will ask a group of people for feedback about a product, such as the impact of a television ad or the effectiveness of a website design. So to enter those keywords, what we're going to do is we're going to use our insert panel over here on the right. Now keywords are going to be under our common categories. So we're going to scroll down. And here we have the keywords. You can see I already have it set, but it's usually defaulted to meta. So what we're going to do is just click on the little drop down here, change it to keywords, and that's going to open up our keyword wizard. Here we want to enter those keywords that are going to be displayed in our website. Now since I'm working on the Trip Smart website, I'm going to want to make sure that I have my title in here, Trip Smart. And I'm going to also want to make sure that I tell my users what my site is. A travel website for all your needs. Let's also put in that we have tours. And let's talk about how we're also customized trips. You'll notice that once I click OK, again, nothing has changed on my page content because this is a keyword that's up in the head content, and now I have a meta name of keywords, and then here is the content that I typed in as my keywords. I can also do my description by using the same insert button on the right. I'm going to go ahead and just take the description here of the smart choice for the savvy chat. The smart choice for the savvy traveler. And click OK. You can now see that the meta name of description is also in the head content. The next thing that we want to do is basically set the page background color. Now this is where we were talking about the colors having to be web safe and also showing a hexadecimal value. The easiest way of editing the background color at this point is to use what we call the page properties dialog. I'm going to click back over here into my panel so that I can start editing my background in the page properties. You can see that when I do that, my property inspector down here at the bottom has changed depending on what I have selected. The page properties can be opened by clicking this button at the bottom in your property inspector. This is going to open up several different options for us to edit some of the page property links. You can see that I can make the background either an image by browsing for it here, or I can change my background color here. When I click inside of this gray box, I end up getting a color picker with the color palette and the hexadecimal values being shown here as I scroll over them. You can see that it's limiting it to that little 3-letter code that we talked about with hexadecimal. Let's go ahead and choose a complementary color to our website design for the background. You can do that by using the color picker of either choosing some of these web-safe colors, or I can go up here and choose something out of my banners, such as this light gray. That way it's going to match exactly with an image that I have on my website, and you'll notice that once I hit apply, it changes it to that grayish green color. You can do this if you don't like your color. You can easily just change it back to the default by clicking on the default color button here, and that's going to change it back to white. So let's go ahead and choose a color of your choice, yellow or gray. Again, something that you want here. You want it to be a fairly light color so that you have that good contrast, because it's going to be difficult for your users to read what's on the page if there's not enough contrast between the colors we use on our font and the colors that we have behind that. I'm going to go ahead and click OK to close this out now that I've checked my background color, and you can see that now my background color is defined up here as DOD-OB4. So that's the hexadecimal value there. Next, we're going to discuss creating, importing, and formatting text, since most of the information on your web page is going to be presented in the form of text. As we spoke about before, you can just type this directly into Dreamweaver, or if you created your text in something like Microsoft Word, you can copy and paste it or import it from there. Dreamweaver is going to preserve the formatting, but it will generate what's called clean HTML code. That's code that's going to do what it's supposed to do without using unnecessary instructions which take up memory. You'll also see that there's a lot of junk code that comes in with Microsoft Word, and it really doesn't do anything for your formatting or for the usability of the website. So you're going to want to make sure that you clean that code if you bring it in from another software program. When you format text, it's important to keep in mind that your site users must have the same fonts installed on their computer as the fonts you use. So if you're using something that you've downloaded off of the internet or a custom font that's really cool looking but isn't necessarily common, you need to make sure that the text has appeared correctly for all web users. To avoid the font compatibility and accessibility issues, you can use what's called Typekit. This is a company that Adobe acquired in 2011 that provides web fonts throughout the Adobe Creative Cloud. Typekit will offer fonts through a subscription-based service that can be read correctly by all browsers and devices. Some software programs can also convert your text into images so that the text will retain the same appearance no matter which fonts are installed. If your text doesn't have a font specified, the default font on the user's computer is going to be used to display the text. Keep in mind that some fonts might not appear the same on both a Windows and a Mac. Their fonts are rendered or drawn on the screen differently because the computers use different technologies to render them. They're also not going to necessarily look the same if you're using different browsers. So if you're not using embedded fonts, it's wise to stick with the standard fonts that work well with both systems and all browsers. You're always going to want to test your pages using both operating systems and several different browsers. Keep in mind that once you do convert that text into an image, you will no longer be able to edit it. Because text is more difficult and tiring to read on a computer screen than on a printed page, you should make your text on your website attractive and easy to read. One way to do this is to format your text by changing its font size and color. Previously, web designers used the Property Inspector to apply formatting attributes such as font type, size, color, alignment, and indents. This created HTML tags in the code that directed the way that the fonts would appear in a browser. Tags are the parts of the code that specify the appearance for all the page content when viewed in a browser. But now, the more accepted method is to create what's called a cascading style sheet, or CSS, to format and place web page elements. Cascading style sheets are sets of formatting attributes used to format web pages to provide a consistent presentation for content across your entire site. CSS makes it easy to separate your page content from the page design, and the content is placed in the body section on web pages, and then the styles are placed on either an external style sheet file or in the page head content. By separating the content from the design, it's preferable because editing it and formatting it are two separate tasks. Creating the page content is a separate process from formatting the content, so when you use CSS styles, you can update or change the page content without disturbing the page formatting. You can also apply some formatting without creating styles by using the bold and italic HTML tags. Besides the AP and divs, you can also use the welcome screen or new command on the file menu to create several different types of pages. The pre-designed CSS page layouts make it easy to design accessible web pages based on cascading style sheets without an advanced level of expertise in writing HTML code. The fluid grid layouts, CSS style sheets, and sample pages are just a few of the options, and it's worth the time to explore each category to understand what's available to you as a designer. Once you have selected a page layout, you can then customize it to suit your needs. As you learned, a div tag is a container that formats the blocks of information on a web page, such as your background colors, images, links, tables, and text. Once you have created a layout using div tags, you are ready to insert and format the text. As with formatting text on a web page, you should use the CSS styles to format the text in the div tags. You can also add other properties such as text indents, padding, margins, and background color using CSS. We're going to now talk about using a web page on a pre-designed CSS layout and show how in Code View you can see the helpful comments that explain the sections of the code. The comments are in gray to differentiate them from the rest of the code, and the CSS rules can reside in the head section of the page or in an external style sheet. The code for the CSS container begins with the class or the name of the rule, and then is followed by the rule properties. The code that links the rules to the content will be located in the body section. It's unlikely that you will find a pre-designed CSS page that's exactly what you have in mind for your website. But once you've created the page with the pre-designed CSS layout, it's easy to modify the individual rule properties to change the content, formatting, or placement to better fit your needs. For example, you can easily change the properties to fit the color scheme of your website. To change the rules properties, you're going to click on the plus sign next to the style sheet name, and then if necessary, to see the rules listed in each section as shown here, and then select the rule you want to modify. The properties and the values of the selected rule will appear in your properties pane where you can modify them. If you have multiple style sheets, you can either use the style sheet or a combination to format the page content. Tables are a very powerful way to control the layout on your website and put things into blocks so that they look more clean and precise for the user. Now that you've learned how CSS can act as containers to hold information, you can use the tables as another layout tool. So when we're wanting to make grids for a list of data, we click the Table button on the Insert panel. When the Layout category of the Insert panel is displayed, we can choose between two modes that give us different ways to view our table, either Standard mode or Expanded Tables mode. The Expanded Tables mode is going to add extra space between your cells, which is going to make it easier for you to select those small cells. So click whichever appropriate button on the Insert panel after selecting a table for your page. To create a table in the Standard mode, you're going to click on the Table button on the Insert panel, open the Table dialog box, and then enter the value for the number of rows and columns in the Table dialog box. The rest of the table properties are going to be assigned using CSS. And if you plan to only use one table in the design of your site, you can create a rule to modify the whole table tag and save it to your website style sheet. You then use this rule to add formatting options to the tables such as border or the outline around the frame, and you can also do things such as nested tables, cell padding, cell walls, or cell spacing. You can apply some formatting without creating styles by using the bold and italic HTML tags. You can also use the HTML heading tags, which will determine the relative size and boldness of text and which help to show the importance of the text relative to the rest of the text on the web page. Even if you use the property inspector to format text with HTML tags, Dreamweaver will automatically create styles when you apply them in most formatting attributes. You can change the format of your text with different fonts by choosing a font combination from the font list in the CSS property inspector. A font combination is a set of font choices that specify which fonts a browser should use to display the text on your web page. Font combinations ensure that if one of those fonts is not available, then the browser will use the next one specified in the font combination. So for an example, if the text is formatted with a font combination of Arial, Helvetica, and sans serif, the browser will first look on the user system for Arial. If that's not available, then it will look for Helvetica, and if that's not available, it will look for any sans serif font to apply to the text. Using fonts within the default settings is wise because fonts set outside of these settings might not be available on all users' computers. The HTML property inspector will display options to format blocks of text as paragraphs or as different sizes of headings. And to format a paragraph as a heading, you can click anywhere on the paragraph and then select the heading size you want from the format list in the HTML property inspector. Keep in mind that if you mix too many different fonts and formatting attributes on a web page, that can result in pages that are visually confusing and difficult to read. Let's go back to our TripSmart example to show how easy it is to do text. One of the things is I want to add another option on my menu bar up here for my navigation. I want to add the word catalog. So I'm just going to click to where I want to insert it and type the word in. Now I also want to add some address and contact information below my phone number here. So I'm going to click on the web page where I want to insert that text and just start typing. Now, if I hit enter, you'll see that it's double spaced. So what I'm going to do is hold down my shift key while pressing my enter key, and that's going to do what we call a line break or single space. I'm going to go ahead and type in my TripSmart address. Which is 1106 Beechwood in Fayetteville, Arkansas. I'm going to hit Shift Enter at the end of that line to add in my phone number. And now I'm going to format this text. I want it to be italicized. Now, as we spoke about before, I could do this with CSS, but the easiest way to do it is just to highlight on my text and click the italic button down here in my Properties Inspector. You can see that my text is now italicized, and in the code, I have the EM tag for emphasis. Now we're going to talk about adding links to our web pages. Links or hyperlinks provide the real power for web pages. They make it possible for users to navigate all the pages in a website and to connect to other pages anywhere on the web. Users are more likely to return to websites that have a user-friendly navigation structure, and they also enjoy websites that have interesting links to other web pages or other websites. To add links on a web page, first select the text or image that you want to serve as a link, and then, in the link text box in the Property Inspector, specify a path to the page which you want to link to. When you create links on a web page, it's important to avoid broken links or links that can't find their intended destination. You can accidentally cause a broken link by typing the incorrect address for the link in the link text box. Broken links can be caused by companies merging, going out of business, or simply moving a website address. In addition to adding links to your pages, you should provide a point of contact or a place on a web page that provides users with a means of contacting the company. A common point of contact is a mail to link, which is just an email address that users with questions or problems can use to contact someone at the company's headquarters. As you can see on this slide, we're using the mail to manager at stretchumbrella.com, So when people click on that link in our web page, it's going to automatically allow them to email the manager. This is done by going to our TripSmart website, and we're going to want to put in a contact to link. So I'm going to put contact us. I'm then going to highlight this text. And in my link, I'm going to put mail to manager@tripsmart.com. You can see that I either have to tab or enter out of that to make it apply, and it now has put my contact us as a link on the web page. One of the most important functions of adding links to your web page is for a menu bar or navigation bar, which is the area on your page that contains links to the main pages of your website. They're usually located at the top or on the side of each page in a website, and they can be created with text, images, or both. They're the backbone of your navigation structure, which includes all navigation aids for moving around the website. To make it as easy as possible, you should place the bar in the same position on each page. To do that, what we're going to do is change our simple text-based menu bar at the top here into hyperlinks so that we can use it for navigation. You're going to want to highlight the text that you're going to turn into a link, in this case, the word home. I'm going to go down to link in my property inspector and type file name that I want the home link to go to. Now in this case, it's going to be index.html. So I'm going to go ahead and type that in the link button here. Now note, when you're doing links, you either need to use the tab key to move out of that, or you need to hit the enter key to make it take. You can now see that home is underlined and in blue, showing that it is a link on my website. You can also see that in my code, that link has been added. Now another way of selecting text on your website is to just simply double-click it. If it has spaces around it, it's going to select that entire word. So it's a quick and easy way to select a word for hyperlinking. Another feature of Dreamweaver is what we call the Point to File button. I really like this. It looks like a little compass, and what you can do is just click on it and hold, and then drag to the page in your file inspector that you actually want it to link to, in this case, catalog.html. When I point to that and I let go of my mouse button, you can see that it automatically populates a link with catalog.html. It puts in my href and my code, and you can see that the link is now cataloged here on the website. So one of the reasons I like doing it that way is because HTML is very picky, and if for any reason you accidentally mistype it in the link button, it won't work and you'll have a broken link. When you use the point to file, you're making sure that it's linking to the actual file with the way that it is spelled. Let's go ahead and do newsletter. Double click, grab your point to file, point to newsletter, services, point to services, tours, and point to tours. And you'll see that the last link on this navigation bar is contact us. But as you know, we put in our contact information down here below on our homepage. So I'm going to just go ahead and click there and delete it. I now have hyperlinks to home, catalog, newsletter, services, and tours on my website. You'll see that if I do my live web view, I'm able to click on these hyperlinks, and it should take me to the appropriate sites. You'll also see that if I want to test and see how these work, I can click on my little globe icon up here, which is to preview it. I'm going to go down and I'm going to preview it in Internet Explorer. Dreamweaver is automatically going to prompt me to save my changes at this point. When I click yes, it's going to go ahead and launch this page in Internet Explorer so I can see exactly how it's going to show up on the web. You can see that right now my TripSmart title is showing up in my web browser tab. My image is here in my background color, and you can see that my links are up here above. Now, since I've visited my home link, it is in purple since that's the standard web colors. You can also see that if I click on my other hyperlinks here, it's taking me to my other pages. At this point, we haven't developed those other pages yet, so they're just a blank HTML document. So you can click back to get back to the home page, and you can see that as I'm clicking these, it is loading that HTML, but there's not a significant difference in what we see since we haven't actually developed those supporting pages yet. We've just put in the blank HTML so that we could make those hyperlinks in our menu navigation. Throughout the process of creating a web page, you can make mistakes along the way. Fortunately, you have a tool named the History panel to undo your mistakes. The History panel records each editing and formatting task you perform and displays it in a list in the order in which you completed them. Each task listed in the History panel is called a step, and you can drag the slider on the left-hand side of the History panel to undo or redo steps. You can also click in the bar to the left of a step to undo all the steps below it, and you can click a step to select it. By default, the History panel will record up to 20 steps, and you can change this number by going to the General category of the Preferences dialog box. But keep in mind that setting this number too high will require additional memory and could affect Dreamweaver's performance. It has the capability to memorize certain tasks and consolidate them into one command. This is a really useful feature for steps that you perform repetitively on web pages, such as editing preferences or changing the panel arrangements. We also have a way of viewing the code in a thing called the Code Inspector. You can view it in Code and Design or a separate window that displays the current page in Code View. An example of that is here. The advantage of using the Code Inspector is that you can see a full screen view of your page in Design View while you're viewing the underlying code in a floating window that you can resize and position wherever you want. You can add advanced features such as JavaScript functions to web pages by copying and pasting code from one page to another using the Code Inspector. A JavaScript function is a block of code that adds dynamic content such as rollovers or interactive forms to a web page. A rollover is just a special effect that changes the appearance of an object when the mouse moves over it. If you're new to HTML, you can use the reference panel to find answers to your HTML questions. This contains many of the resources besides just HTML help, such as JavaScript help as well. You can open the reference panel from the Code Inspector, or you can do it from the Results panel. We do have a few things that we call power user shortcuts. These are shown in your text on page 2-27, and it can be a quick and easy way for you to get things accomplished. For instance, Select All is Control-A on a window or Command-A on a Mac. It's also easy to insert comments into HTML code. Comments can provide helpful information in describing portions of the code, such as a JavaScript function, and you can create comments in any Dreamweaver view, but you have to turn on the invisible elements to see them if you're in Design View. Use the Edit on Window or Dreamweaver Preferences Invisible Elements Comments command to enable the viewing of comments, and then use the View Visual Aids Invisible Element command to display them on the page. To create a comment, you select the comment category on the Insert panel and click Comment. This will type the comment into the dialog box, and then you click OK. They're not visible in browser windows, however. Modifying and testing web pages is a critical component of web page design. Many people are tempted to insert an unfinished page as a placeholder that they intend to finish later, rather than having the real content. These pages usually contain text or an image that indicates that the page is not finished or under construction. You shouldn't ever publish these web pages that have a link to an unfinished page because it's frustrating for a user to click on a link for a page you want and only open it to find an under construction note or some other image displayed. You want to make the best possible impression on your users, and if you can't complete a page before publishing it, at least provide enough information on it to make it worth the trip. Testing web pages is a continuous process. You never really finish a website because there are always additions and corrections to make. As you add and modify pages, you must test each page as part of the developmental process. The best way to test a web page is to preview it in live view or in browser view to make sure that all the text and image elements appear the way you expect them to. You should also test your links to make sure that they work properly. You need to proofread your text to make sure that it contains all the necessary information for the page with no typographical or grammatical errors. Designers typically view a page in a browser and then return to Dreamweaver to make the necessary changes, and then view the page in the browser again. They repeat this process many times before the page is ready for publishing. In fact, it's sometimes difficult to stop making improvements to a page and move on to another project, but you need to strike a balance among quality, creativity, and productivity. You should test your pages using different browsers and a wide variety of screen sizes to ensure the best view of your web page by the most people possible. Most web users today use a desktop computer with a screen resolution above 1024 by 768. Very few users use a resolution below this, so design your pages for higher resolution. However, you also need to accommodate users who are going to view your page with laptops, tablets, and mobile phones, so you want to make sure your pages look good in all these sizes as well. To view your page using a different screen size, you're going to click the Windows size pop-up menu on the status bar and then choose the setting you want to use. You can also use the mobile size, tablet size, and desktop size buttons on the status bar to view your pages. Adobe Browser Lab is a tool that checks your pages by simulating multiple browsers and platforms. You can use it to test your pages in browsers that aren't installed on your computer. For example, if you're using a PC, you can use Browser Lab to test your pages with Apple Safari. It's a great way to test your pages with multiple browsers and multiple versions of the same browser, which would be impossible otherwise without using multiple computers. You can access Browser Lab through the Adobe Browser Lab panel or in the Preview, Debug, and Browser button. You can use the Browser Lab As you view your pages in the browser, take a critical look at the symmetry of the page. Is it balanced? Are there too many images compared to the text, or vice versa? Does everything heavy seem to be on the top or bottom of the page, or do the page elements seem to balance with weight evenly distributed between the top, bottom, and sides? Use design principles to create a site-wide consistency for your pages. You want to use what we call the rule of thirds. This is dividing the page into 9 squares like a tic-tac-toe grid, and the interest is increased when the focus is on one of the intersections in the grid. The most important information should be at the top of the page where it's visible without scrolling, or what we call above the fold. Today, most users use a high-definition screen. Because of this, more content can be displayed at one time on a computer monitor. Some people might use their whole screen to view the page on the internet, and others might choose to allocate a smaller area of their screen to the browser window. But people tend to use their screen real estate in really different ways. An ideal web page will not be so small that it tries to spread out over a larger screen size, or so large that the user has to use horizontal scroll bars to read the content. The guideline is that text can be resized without assistive technology up to 200% in a way that doesn't require the user to scroll horizontally and read a line of text on a full-screen window. Achieving the best balance in meeting accessibility guidelines is one of the design decisions you must make during the planning process. We're now ready to work with text and cascading style sheets. Since most web pages depend largely on text to convey information, we want to use Dreamweaver's tools to work with that text in a way that makes our pages attractive and easy to read. These tools can also help us format text quickly and make sure that it has a consistent look across all of our web pages. You can save time and ensure that all of your page elements have a consistent appearance by using cascading style sheets or CSS. These are just sets of formatting instructions, usually stored on a separate file, that control the appearance and position of text and graphics on a web page or throughout a website. If a web page contains a large amount of text, it can be difficult for viewers to digest it all. In this case, we use lists. Dreamweaver can create 3 types of lists: unordered, ordered, or definition. Unordered lists are items that do not need to appear in a specific sequence, such as a grocery list, which puts the items in a random order. Items in unordered lists are usually preceded by a bullet, a small dot, or a similar icon. Because of that, we sometimes call these bulleted lists. Although you can use paragraph indentations to create an unordered list, bullets often make it easier to read. So to create an unordered list, first you're going to select the text that you want to format, and then use the Unordered List button in the HTML Property Inspector to insert the bullets at the beginning of each paragraph of the selected text. In Dreamweaver, the default bullet style is a round dot. To change the bullet style to a square, you can use cascading style sheets. You can create a rule to modify the UL tag, which stands for Unordered List. This is going to apply to all your unordered lists in the website, as shown in Figure 1 on page 3-4. Or you can create an inline rule to just modify one unordered list, as shown in Figure 2 on page 3-5. You will learn about cascading style sheets in the next lesson. With ordered lists, they're sometimes called numbered lists because these are presented in a specific sequence and they're preceded by sequential numbers or letters. An ordered list is appropriate for a list in which each item has to be executed according to its specific order. A list that provides numbered directions for driving from point A to point B, or a list that provides instructions for assembling a bicycle are both examples of ordered lists. You can format an ordered list to show different styles of numbers or letters by using cascading style sheets, as shown in Figure 3 on page 3-5. You can also apply numbers, Roman numerals, lowercase letters, or uppercase letters to an ordered list. The last type of list that we can create is what we call a definition list. This is similar to an unordered list, but it has a hanging indent and it's not preceded by bullets. They're often used with terms and definitions such as in a dictionary or a glossary. Here's an example of the formatted ordered list where you can see that we have several questions listed in order of 1 through 4. Additionally, we can create what's called a definition list. This is similar to an unordered list, but it has a hanging indent and it's not preceded by bullets. They are often used with terms and definitions, such as in a dictionary or a glossary. To create a definition list, you're going to select the text to use for the list, click Format on the menu bar, and then point to List and then down to Definition List. So I have gone out to the web and downloaded my Chapter 3 files, so I need to now refresh my file list by pressing this little blue arrow. And you can now see that I have DW231 and 32 in my file list. I'm going to go ahead and open up the DW3_1 page, as this is going to be the page that we're going to create our lists out of. The first thing we want to do is save this as newsletter. So we're going to be overwriting this file here, which is at this time just a blank web page. So I'm going to go up to File, down to Save As, and here I'm just going to grab Newsletter and click Save. It'll ask me if I want to overwrite. I'm going to click Yes. And now I'm ready to go ahead and start formatting this page. What we want to do is make sure that our banner image is formatted correctly. You can see that it's going to Assets and then getting the Chit Smart banner, which is correct. So when I upload this to the live web, that image won't be broken and it will show up on my website. The next thing I want to do is create an unordered list from the text beginning Be Organized. So I'm going to go ahead and start right here where it says Be Organized, and I want to take this all the way through to the end of my page. So I'm going to highlight all of this text here. Now, what I'm going to do is create an unordered list by just pressing this button here. You can see that now I have bullets next to each one of these statements at the beginning of each paragraph. Now I also want to create a CSS rule called paragraph text, which is going to go in and format this text here. Now we're ready to start talking about cascading style sheets or CSS. These are made up of sets of formatting attributes called rules, which define the formatting attributes for the page content. Rules are sometimes referred to as styles, and style sheets are classified by where the code is stored. So if the code is stored in a separate file, we call that an external style sheet. If it's part of the head content of an individual web page, we call that internal or embedded style. And if it's part of the body of the HTML code, we call it an inline style. External CSS is saved as a file with the .css extension, and it's stored in the website's directory structure, usually in your root folder. You want to make sure that the external style sheet is linked to any page that you want that style sheet to apply to. External style sheets are the preferred method for creating and using styles. CSS is also classified by its type. A class type can be used to format any page element, and the ID type and tag type are used to redefine a HTML tag. A compound type is used to format a selection. In this chapter, we're going to use the class type and the tag type, and they're both going to be stored in an external style sheet file. When we use the buttons on the CSS style panel to create, edit, and apply rules, we're going to add it to the new CSS rule dialog box to name the rule and then specify whether we want to add it to a new or an existing style sheet. We will then use the CSS rule definition dialog box to set the formatting attributes for the rule. Once we add a new rule to a style sheet, it will appear in a list of the CSS style panel. To apply a rule, we just select the text to which we want to apply it, and then choose the rule from the targeted rule list in the CSS Property Inspector. We can apply these rules to elements on a single web page or to all of our pages in a website. And when we edit a rule, such as changing the font size, all page elements formatted with that rule will automatically be updated. So once we create that external CSS, we can attach it to the remaining pages of our websites to control our formatting and get that unified and consistent look across the entire site. We want to use the CSS Style panel to manage our styles, and the Properties pane will display the properties for a selected rule at the bottom of the panel. We can easily change the properties value by clicking an option from a drop-down menu. You can use CSS styles to save an enormous amount of time because being able to define a rule and then apply it to page elements on all the pages of the website means that we can make hundreds of formatting changes in just a few minutes. In addition, style sheets can create a more uniform look for the page, and they generate cleaner code. Using style sheets will separate the development of content, the way that content is presented, and the pages formatted with the CSS styles are much more compliant with current accessibility standards than those with manual formatting. For more information about cascading style sheets, you can visit w3.org/style. You can see the properties for the CSS rule by looking at the style sheet code, and a CSS rule consists of two parts. The selector is the name of the tag to which the style declarations have been assigned, and the declaration consists of the properties such as a font size or font weight. A value such as 14px or bold, and for example, the code for an internal style that will set the background color for a page could look like background color FFF, which is white. Now the property and the value together comprise the declaration, and when there's more than one property, each additional property and value are separated by a semicolon. When you create a new external CSS file, you will see it as a related files document in your document window, and you're going to want to save this file as you make changes to it. So going back to our TripSmart website, we're going to create an external style sheet controlling the style of our website as a whole. So the first thing I want to do is actually make something that applies to my paragraph text here. So what I'm going to do is go over to my CSS style panel, and I'm going to click this little plus sign, which means new CSS rule. At this time, it's going to ask me, what do you want to apply this rule to? I can choose class, ID, tag, or compound. At this point, I'm going to make a tag rule that is going to apply to all paragraph text. So I'm going to go down here and select my P for paragraph. That's going to take all my P elements and apply whatever style formatting I give to it in the whole website. Now you can see here, if I did this document only, it would place it up in the header content of this page only and only apply to the singular page. So I'm going to click a new style sheet file, and that's going to save it as an external style sheet. When I click OK, Dreamweaver is going to prompt me to save this as an external .css file. I'm just going to call it TripSmart_style. And you can see that it is in my TripSmart root folder. So I'm going to go ahead and click Save. And now it opens up my CSS rule definition box in which I can set all my formatting and different things for these categories. In this case, I'm going to make something very simple, such as changing my paragraph font to Verdana. Let's also change our font size to 10 and just click OK. You can see that once I do that, anything that is listed as p text goes to Verdana 10. You can see the p tag over here in the left, and you can see why these aren't organized that way is because they're part of the unordered list. So only these areas here are getting that p tag applied to it. Now I can also create a CSS rule that applies to my list items. So let's say I want to edit the LIs so that they're bold and kind of stand out from this basic text. I'm going to go back here, do another CSS rule. I'm going to apply it to a tag. We're going to use the LI tag. And you can see that now, since I've already saved that TripSmart_style CSS, Dreamweaver defaults to that file for my external styles. I can click OK, and then it'll ask me what kind of formatting do you want for that. Since this is a type, I just want to make it bold, so I'm going to change my font weight to bold here. I can click Apply at any time to see how that's going to look on my page, and if I like the way that that looks. If I decide that I don't like that, I can always take it off and change it to something else, such as like that. I'm going to click OK, and you can see that over here in my CSS style panel now, I have the TripSmart style, the P tag, and LI tag that I've added those formatting attributes for. You'll also see that in your file manager, you now have a TripSmart_style.css file in your root folder. Now, the way that you make sure that you're linked to this external style sheet so that it will apply is in the head content. Now, this can easily be done either through the HTML, but you'll see that since we created it with the Dreamweaver wizard, it automatically has inserted that code for us. It's this one on line 6 where it says that the link href to TripSmart_style.css, and it's telling you that it's a style sheet. So you can also link your other pages. So let's go to our index page, for instance. Open that up. And I want to link my style sheet to that as well. You can see that right now in style, all we have is some styles that apply to this particular web page itself. So these are examples of the inline and the embedded styles that we spoke about before. I also want to link the style sheet for the external here, so I'm going to click on this little chain link. I'm going to go to Browse. It'll take me to my site root. I grab the CSS, click OK, click OK again, and now you can see my paragraph text is formatted according to that external style sheet. When I get to this point, since I have changes to my newsletter and index, you can see that I have a little asterisk up here in my file name. That's Dreamweaver's way of showing me that I've made changes to these pages and I have not yet saved my changes. So the easiest way to save everything all at once if you're working with several different things is to just go to the File menu and then go down to Save All. This will apply any changes I've made across my website to everything, and then I can go ahead and close out a Dreamweaver without worrying about any other kind of ramifications. Some people prefer to do HTML coding rather than using Dreamweaver's GUI interface. In Code View, you can see the coding toolbar. It contains a number of handy tools that will help you navigate through and view your code in different ways. It has buttons that expand or collapse code, buttons for changing the way the code is displayed, and buttons for inserting and removing comments. The coding toolbar appears on the left side of the document window, and although you can't move it, you can hide it using the toolbar command on the View menu in Code View. We can customize the way our page code appears in the Code View, such as wrapping the lines of code, displaying or hiding the code, And we can also have different code types appear in different colors. You can also have different code types appear in indented lines or to display syntax error alerts. We can view these options using the View Options button on the Code Inspector toolbar, or we can view these by changing them on the Code View Options menu under the View menu on the menu bar. As your pages get longer and the code more complex, it is helpful to collapse sections of your code much as you can collapse and expand panels, folders, and styles. Collapsing code lets you temporarily hide the code between two different sections of code that you would like to read together. To collapse the selected lines of code, you can click the minus sign or the triangle next to the line number. You can also use the Collapse Full tag or the Collapse Selection buttons on the coding toolbar. This will allow you to look at two different sections of code that are not adjacent to each other. Adding comments is also an easy way to add documentation to your code, which is especially helpful when you are working in a team environment and other team members are going to be working on pages with you. For example, you might want to use comments to communicate instructions like do not alter the code below this line, or add final schedule here when it becomes available. Comments aren't visible in the browser, but it helps those designers understand what you were thinking when you put that code in. If you're typing code directly into the code view, Dreamweaver can speed your work by offering you code hints. These code hints are lists of tags that appear as you type, similar to other autocomplete features that you have and probably used in other software applications. Are you typing code? As you are typing your code, Dreamweaver will recognize the tag name and offer you choices to complete the tag simply by double-clicking a tag choice in the menu, as shown in this figure here. You can also add your own code hints to the list using JavaScript. Code hints are stored in the file codehints.xml. You can also convert one type of style to another. For instance, you can move an embedded style to an external style sheet or an inline style to an embedded style. To do this, you're going to select the style in Code View, right-click the code, point to the CSS styles, and then click Move CSS Rules. You can also move styles in the CSS Styles panel by selecting the style, right-clicking it, and then choosing the action you want from the shortcut menu. Here you can see that we're embedding this small underscore text rule and moving it to the su underscore styles file. Next, we're going to be talking about how we add images to our website. We've spoken how the majority of web page information appears in the form of text, but pages are much more interesting if they also contain images that enhance or illustrate the information. A well-designed web page usually includes a balanced combination of text and images. Dreamweaver provides many tools for working with images that you can use to make your web pages attractive and easy to understand. Images make web pages visually stimulating and more exciting than pages that contain only text. However, you should use images with an eye on both purpose of each page and the overall design of each page. There's a fine balance between using too many images that will overwhelm your user and not providing enough images to enhance the text. There are many ways to work with images so that they complement the contents of pages in a website. You can use specific file formats used to save images for websites to ensure the maximum quality with the minimum file size. Graphics that refer to the appearance of non-text items are usually photographs, logos, menu bars, animations, or background images. Now you need to remember that we usually use GIF or GIF, JPEG, or PNG, and this is because those are those small file sizes which give us a high quality, but will also result in a fast download speed. When we add a graphic to a website, Dreamweaver will automatically add it to our Assets panel. This is because we've already set up our Assets folder as our default Images folder. Now the Asset panel, which is located in the File panel group, will display all of our assets on a website. It contains 9 category buttons that we can view our assets by images, colors, URL, SWF, Shockwave, movies, scripts, templates, or library. Understanding all of these different elements and where they are in the Assets panel will help us save some time when we're trying to add these images into our website. The top pane will display a thumbnail of the selected image in a list, and then we can view the assets in each category in two ways. We can use the Site Option button to view all of our assets in the website, or we can use the Favorite Options button to view just those assets that we have designated as our favorites. These are assets we're going to expect to use repeatedly while we work on our website. We can also use the Assets panel to add an asset to a web page by dragging it from the Asset panel to the page, or by using the Insert button on the Asset panel. If you're working on a page layout without final images ready to place, you can also use what we call an image placeholder. This is just a graphic the same size of the image that we plan to use. You can place it on a page until the actual image is finalized and ready to place on the page. And to insert an image placeholder, you just go to Insert, down to Image Objects menu, and when the final image is ready, you simply replace the image placeholder with the final ready image. You can manage your project files, including video and raw camera files, with the file management tool called Adobe Bridge. We talked about Adobe Bridge a little bit in the beginning of this course, but it's basically just your image file management program that's used across all your Adobe Suite applications. Bridge is an easy way for you to view your files in their original locations before bringing them into the website. Since it's an integrated application, you can use it to manage files among the other Adobe programs such as Photoshop or Illustrator, and you can also use Bridge to add meta tags and search text to your files. To open Bridge, you're going to click Browse in the Bridge command on the File menu, or click the Browse in Bridge button on the standard toolbar. When you insert an image on a web page, you need to position it in relation to the other page elements, such as text or other images. Positioning an image is also called aligning it. By default, when you insert an image in a paragraph, its bottom edge will align with the baseline of the first line of text or other element in the same paragraph. When you first place images on a page, they do not include the code to align them, so they appear at the insertion point with no other page elements next to them. You can add alignment settings with CSS, and by adding a new rule to modify the IMG or image tag, you can add an alignment property and value. If you use an external style sheet, the IMG tag will apply globally to all your images on pages with any link to that style sheet. If you're creating your images in Photoshop, you can paste your PSD file directly into Dreamweaver, and after inserting the image, Dreamweaver will prompt you to optimize the image for the web. Each image on a web page will take a specific number of seconds to download depending on the size of the file. Larger files take longer to download than smaller files, so it's important to determine the smallest acceptable size for an image on a page. Then, if you need to resize an image to reduce the file size, you can use an external image editor to do so, instead of resizing it in Dreamweaver. Decreasing the size of an image using the height and width settings in the Property Inspector will not reduce the file size or the time it will take to download. Ideally, you should use images that have the smallest file size and the highest quality possible, so that each page downloads as quickly as possible. Now, when you place your image on a web page, you have several options for enhancing it or improving its appearance. To make changes to the image itself, such as removing scratches or erasing parts of it, you might want to use an image editor such as Adobe Fireworks or Photoshop. You can use Dreamweaver to enhance how the image appears on a page. For example, you can modify the brightness and contrast, add borders around the image, or add horizontal and vertical space. Borders are simply frames that surround an image, and horizontal and vertical space will be blank space above, below, and on the sides of the image that will separate it from text and other elements on your page. In the web page from the First Federal Bank website, we used horizontal and vertical space around the images to make these images more prominent. By adding these spaces, it didn't really affect the width or the height of the image, it just added some white space so that the page was more readable. Spacing around the web page objects can also be created by using what we call spacer images, or transparent images that act as placeholders. The best way to make your web page viewer-friendly and accessible to people of all abilities is to use alt text or alternate text, which is just the descriptive text that appears in place of an image while the image is downloading or not displayed. Screen readers or devices used by people with visual impairments to convert written text on a computer monitor to spoken words can read this alternate text and make it possible for those viewers to have an image described to them in detail. Dreamweaver defaults you to add alternate text whenever you insert an image on a page. You can set the alternate text options in the Accessibility category of the Preferences dialog box. You can also insert a background image on a web page to provide more depth and visual interest or to communicate a message or a mood. Now, a tiled image is a small image that will repeat across and down a web page, individually showing as squares or rectangles, whereas a tiled image can download much faster than a large image. Now I'm back into Dreamweaver. What I'm going to do is I've downloaded the files for Chapter 4 and put them into my root site folder. For this exercise, I'm going to use the DW4_3 HTML page. Go ahead and open that up. And I'm going to resave this one as tours. So I'm going to be overriding this blank HTML file here. Go up to File, Save As, choose Tours, Save, Overwrite Yes, and then this is going to now be my tours page. Now what I can do is verify that the path for the banner is set correctly, which it is, Assets, TripSmart Banner, and I can attach the TripSmart CSS file to it. As you can see, there's no styles defined currently, so I'm going to click my Attach Style Sheet, and you can see that since I'm in my local root folder, Dreamweaver automatically finds my TripSmart style. I click OK, and now that has been applied to this page. Now I want to apply heading 1 format to the destination at the very top here. Now the reason I want to do that is to make this a title standing apart from the rest of my text on my page. Now it's very easy to do that. You just highlight the text that you want to change, go down to your targeted rule or HTML, and you can see I had it on CSS, so it was going back and we could change the targeted rule to remove that rule. Or we can go to HTML and just choose heading 1. Now I have that heading 1 applied to the destination at the top of this page. I also want to insert some images on this page. So I'm going to click right before my first paragraph here to insert an image. I'm then going to go into my Assets folder, and in this case I want to use the iguana and the lizard. It's as simple as just grabbing that file and dropping it on my page where I want to insert it. As we spoke about before, Dreamweaver is going to default to make me put in some alternate text here. So what I'm going to want to do is tell my users that this is a picture of an iguana and a lizard. This is a picture of an iguana and a lizard. So for my users with disabilities, I want to make sure that I have an alt text in here that tells them exactly what this is. So I'm going to tell them picture of iguana and lizard. And click OK. You'll see that that will insert my picture here, and I will also put my alt text, picture of iguana and lizard, in my HTML. You can see that that doesn't change the way the image displays on the web page. Now, because of the way that the text is showing up here, I want to do some image alignments to this. So what I'm going to do is grab this image, right-click on it, and put Align Left. You'll see that as soon as I do that, it will put the picture to the far left, moving all my text up and to the right of this image. Now this is where that white space comes in helpful, because you can see that because my image is so close to my text, it makes the readability of this page a little difficult to see. So what I'm going to want to do is add some properties to my image here, and I'm going to do that through CSS. So I'm going to go ahead and add a new CSS rule. I'm going to apply this to the image tag. And you can see that since I have the picture selected in the Dreamweaver, it automatically pulls up image when I want to select this. I do want to put it to my external style sheet, so I'm going to click OK. Now here what I want to do is I want to have a border around my... So when this pulls up, what I'm going to want to do is go to my box category. You can see that in this, I'm able to change a lot of different attributes for this, but what I want to do is put some padding in. So I'm going to just go ahead and put in 10 pixels of padding on the top right, bottom, and left, and click Apply. You can see that that now moves all my text away from my image by 10 pixels, and that's enough that I can now read my text a little more clearly. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Now you can see that down here, the text is starting to look a little odd, so I want to make sure that I'm adding plenty of room in there as well by just hitting my Enter key and moving my text down below. Inserting a background image on a web page can provide depth and visual interest, or it can communicate a message or mood. Background images are the image files used in place of background colors. You can use background image and a background color if you want to have that color show until the image fully loads. You can also tile the image, which is going to load much faster than a large image, and it's just going to tile that small image across and down your screen. You want to make sure that you're definitely providing the necessary contrast for reading your page text. You know, even though they might seem too plain, standard white backgrounds are usually the best choice for web pages just due to the contrast and professionalism that they offer. When you create a web page, you can use a background color or the background image, or you can use background images for some sections and colored for others. Now, when you work on a website, you might find that you have files in your assets folder that you don't actually use in your website much. Now, to avoid accumulating unnecessary files and taking up valuable server space, you want to make sure that you're keeping that assets folder only filled with images that are actually being utilized on your website. This is just good website management practice, and it will prevent the assets folder from filling up with unwanted image files. Now remember that Adobe Bridge is an excellent tool for organizing and managing your images regardless of where they are stored. So when you remove an image from your web page, it doesn't actually remove it from the assets folder or the local site folder of your website. So to remove an asset from a website, if you have a lot of files, it's usually faster to locate the file you want to remove in the asset panel. You can then use the Locate in Site command to open the file panel with the unwanted file selected. If you don't have many images in your site, it's faster to locate them in the file panel. Then you can use the delete command to remove the file from the site. If you designate frequently used image files as favorites, you can locate them quickly in the asset panel by providing this favorites option. It's a good idea to store your original unedited copies of images to a separate folder outside of your assets folder for your website. And then that way, if you edit the original files, you can resave them using different names to ensure that you will be able to find the file in its original and altered state. Now, with monitors today that display millions of colors, usually in high definition, you're not as limited with the number of colors that you can use, and you may choose to select colors outside of the WebSafe palette. You can experiment by choosing colors outside the default color palettes to create a color scheme that will complement your website content. You can use the eyedropper tool to pick a color from a page element, such as a background of an image. To do this, a color box from an open dialog box, such as a CSS rule definition box, will place the pointer over a color of your image, and then the color will replace the previous color in the color box and apply it to your page element. If you're designing pages that will be displayed with a web device, such as a PDA or a mobile phone, Be aware that many of these devices have more limited color displays, and in these cases, it might be wise to stick to the web-safe colors instead. To see the colors used in your site, just click the Colors button on the Asset panel. Some designers choose to display a small image that the user can then click on to make it larger. You see this on retail sites with multiple items for sale, and it's done to conserve space but also keep the page as small as possible. These sites will display what we call thumbnail image, or a small version of the larger one, so that more images can fit on the page. Another technique is to link from one image to the second image that incorporates the first one. For example, a furniture site may create a link from an image of a chair to an image of the chair in a furnished room, and an additional enhancement added to allow users to click on the larger image to even magnify it more. To accomplish this, you're going to need two versions of the same image using an image editor such as Photoshop. One that is small in dimensions and file size, and one that is large in dimensions and file size. After you have both images ready, you place the small image on your page, select it, and then link to the larger image. When the user clicks on the small image in a browser, the large image opens. Another option is to place the large image on a new web page so that you can also include additional descriptive text about the image or link back to the previous page. In most browsers today, when you add a web page to your favorites list or bookmarks, the page title will appear with a small icon that represents a site similar to a logo. We call these favicons, which is short for favorite icon. This feature was introduced in Microsoft Internet Explorer 5, and most browsers now display favicons in the browser address bar. To create a favicon, first you're going to create an icon that is 16 pixels by 16 pixels. Then you're going to save the file as an icon file with the .ico extension in your root folder. Don't save it in a subfolder such as assets or images because it won't link that way. There's going to be plugins available for Photoshop that will save files with the icon file format, or you can search the internet for programs that will generate icons. Then you're going to add that HTML code to the head section of your page to link to the icon file. The browser will then find the icon and load it in the address bar when the page loads. On most websites, users are able to save an image on a page by right-clicking on it, and then clicking Save in the shortcut menu. If you'd like to prevent viewers from having this option, you can add a no right-click script or JavaScript code that will not allow users to display the shortcut menu by right-clicking on an image. To do this, locate JavaScript code that will add this option and copy and paste it into the head content of your page. To locate the JavaScript code, use the search engine to search the internet with a term such as no right-click script. You will find scripts that prevent users from saving any image on the page or all content of any kind on the page. Some scripts will return a message in the browser such as, "This function is disabled," and some don't have a message at all. These scripts will keep many users from saving your images, but they will not stop the most serious and knowledgeable perpetrators. You can also protect website images by inserting the image as a table, cell, or CSS block background, and then placing a transparent image on top of it. Then, when a user attempts to save it with the shortcut menu, they're only going to save the transparent image. What makes websites so powerful are the links or hyperlinks that connect one page to another within a website or to any page on the web. Although you can enhance a website with graphics, animation, movies, and other features to make it visually attractive, the links you include are a site's most essential components. Links that connect the pages within a site are important because they help users navigate between the pages of the site. If it's important to you to keep users within your site, link only to pages within your website and avoid using links to external sites. For example, most e-commerce sites only link to other pages in their own site to discourage shoppers from leaving. You will create links to other pages in our website and to other sites on the web. We're going to insert a sprite menu bar and check the site links to make sure they all work correctly. We're also going to work a little bit with Web 2.0 and social networking, which is the area of the internet that has exploded in recent years. Social networking refers to the grouping of individual web users who connect and interact with other users in online communities. These online communities or virtual communities are social websites that we can join, such as Facebook and Twitter, where you can communicate with others by posting messages or media content, such as images or videos. We're going to learn about how we can connect our website to these communities. Web pages contain two types of links, internal links and external links. We're going to show you how to do these with relative to the page, either relative to the website or relative to something on the web or externally. When we go through these areas, what you're going to see is that we have an HTML button, a text for the link, and then what we call the Universal Resource Locator or URL for a link. This is basically just the website address. Now, all web pages are going to contain these two types of links, either internal or external. Now, the internal links are going to be the web pages within the same website, and external is anything outside of that website. Email addresses are also considered an external link. Both of them have important parts that work together. The first part is displayed on a web page is the text, image, or button that's used for the link, and then the second part is what we call the path, or the name and location of the web page for the file that the users click to open when they click on that link. Setting and maintaining the correct path for all of your links is essential to avoid having broken links in your site, which can cause your user to leave. If one of the objectives of a site is to provide users with additional research sources for information not provided within the site, external links are one way to meet that objective. To create an external link, first select the text or object that you want to serve as a link. Then you're going to type the path to the destination web page in the link box in the Property Inspector. An absolute path is a path used for external links that includes a complete address for the destination page, including the protocol, which is that HTTP //. You want to make sure that you're completing the entire URL address for the destination page. And when necessary, the web page file name and folder hierarchy will also be a part of the absolute path. Each page in a website usually focuses on an individual information category or topic. You should make sure that the home page provides links to each of these major pages in the site, and that all pages in the site contain numerous internal links so that users can move easily from page to page. To create an internal link, you first select the text element or image that you want to use to make the link. Then use the Browse for File button next to the link text box in the HTML Property Inspector to specify the relative path to the destination page. A relative path is the type of path that references the web pages and media files within the same website. Relative paths include a file name and folder location of a file. An example for the code for a relative internal link would be something like ahref news.html. Figure 2 on page 5-5 shows an example of a relative path, and Table 1 describes absolute and relative paths. They can either be site root relative or document relative, and the internal links that you create in this lesson will be document relative. You can also use the Point to File button in the HTML Property Inspector like we did to set up our main navigation on the home page. Now, if you want to do that, you take the file that you want to link to and drag it to the Use for the Link from Files panel to the link text box in the Property Inspector. You should take great care in managing your internal links to make sure that they work correctly and are timely and relevant to the page content. Design and navigation structure of your website so that users are never more than a few clicks away from the page that they will be seeking. A named anchor is just a specific location on a web page that has a descriptive name. These are used a lot in web pages that are very long or have a lot of content. It allows the user to be able to quickly jump down to the content that they're looking for, or then return to the top of the page in a quick and easy manner. Some web pages have so much content that the users have to scroll repeatedly to get to the bottom of the page, and we don't want them to have to do that. So what we use is the name anchor, and the target is the location on the web page that the browser will go to when someone clicks on that internal link. We can insert a named anchor called top at the top of a web page and then create a link to it from the very bottom of the page. We can also insert named anchors in strategic places on the web page, such as the beginning of paragraph headings. If we insert a named anchor using the Named Anchor button in the Common category on the Insert panel, we can then enter the name of the anchor in the Name Anchor dialog box. You should choose short names here that describe the anchor location on the page. In Dreamweaver, named anchors appear on the web page as yellow anchor icons, and it's going to be in the design view. Selected anchors will appear as blue icons, and you can show or hide the named anchor icons by clicking View on the menu bar, pointing to visual aids, and then clicking the invisible elements. Once you create a named anchor, you can create an internal link to it using one of two methods. You can either select the text or the image on the page that we want to use to make the link, and then drag the Point to File button from the Property Inspector to the named anchor on the page. Or you can select the text or image to which you want to make the link, and then type the # or hashtag, followed by the name anchor name such as top, in the link text box in the Property Inspector. But to avoid possible errors, you should create a named anchor before you create the link to it. The next thing is what we call a Spry menu bar. This is a JavaScript-driven ability for making navigation, and it really makes our website more visually appealing. We can add special effects, we can create a menu bar with rollover images, and one way to do that is by using Spry. Now this is just a preset widget that's available in Dreamweaver, and it's dynamic, user-friendly, and easy to insert and customize. A widget is a piece of code that allows the user to interact with a program, such as clicking a menu item to open a page. And some other examples of widgets are interactive buttons, pop-up windows, and progress indicators. Spry, or the Spry framework, is an open-source code developed by Adobe Systems to help designers quickly incorporate dynamic content on their web pages. To insert a Spry menu bar, you're going to click on Insert in the menu bar, point to the Layout Objects, and then click Spry menu bar. The Insert Spry menu bar dialog box will appear. You can use this dialog box to specify the appearance of the menu bar in each link called an item. When you first insert it, Dreamweaver will automatically assign it 4 menu items, some of which will have sub-menu items. If you want your menu bar to display differently, a number of menu items and sub-menu items, you can add new ones and delete the ones that you don't need. You can also add special effects for your menu bar items by changing the characteristics for each item's state. A state is the condition of the item relative to the mouse pointer. You can create a rollover effect for each menu item by using a different background and text color for each state to represent how the menu item appears when users move over it with their mouse or away from it with the mouse. You can also create special effects for web page links. When you insert a menu bar on the web page using the Insert Spry menu bar command, Dreamweaver will automatically add the JavaScript code and the CSS styles to the page to make the interaction work with the menu bar items. Dreamweaver will also create a Spry Assets folder and add that to your local site folder. The Spry Assets folder stores the newly created files that make the menu function correctly in the browser. When a user views the web page with one of these menu bars, the files that run the menu functions are stored on the user or client's computer. One of the new HTML5 tags is what we call the nav tag, or NAV. This is used to designate a section of a page with navigation links. And although the links don't have to be placed within the nav tags, doing so will help to provide accessibility. This is another example of content used by screen readers. There are other methods that you can use to create a menu bar with images, such as an image map. After you create the menu bar, you can save time by copying and pasting it to the other main pages in your site, but make sure you place the menu bar in the same position on each page. This practice will ensure that the menu bar will look the same on each page, making it much easier for your users to navigate all of the pages in your website. If you are even one line or one pixel off, the menu bar will appear to jump as it changes position from page to page. So when we learn to use templates, you'll see that when we create the main page template with a menu bar, we're going to base the rest of the pages on that template so that we don't have any of these kind of changes. This is going to help us to provide that continuity across the site, and it'll be easier to update when changes are needed. Another way to create links for your web page is to combine them with images by creating an image map. This is an image that has one or more hotspots placed on top of it. A hotspot is a clickable area on the image that when the user clicks it, it will link to a different location on the page or to another web page. For example, in this image here, when you click on it, you get information about the national parks in that state. You can create hotspots by first selecting the image that you want to place the hotspot on, and then using one of the hotspot tools in the property inspector, you define the shape, either a rectangle, circle, or freehand. There are several ways to create these image maps and make them user-friendly and accessible. One way is to be sure to include the alternate text for each hotspot, and another is to draw the hotspot boundaries just a little bit larger than they need to be to cover the area you want to set as a link. This will allow your users a little leeway when they place their mouse over the hotspot by creating a larger target area for them. You always want to assign a unique name for each image map. Dreamweaver hotspot tools make creating image maps really easy, but in addition to the rectangle hotspot tool, you can create any shape you need using the circle or the polygon. For instance, on the map of the U.S., you can draw an outline around each state with the polygon hotspot tool and then make each state clickable. You can easily change and rearrange the hotspots on the image, and you can use the pointer hotspot tool to select the hotspot you're going to edit. You can drag one of the hotspot selector handles to change its size or shape, and you can also move the hotspot by dragging it to a new position on the image. It's a good idea to limit the number of complex hotspots in your image because the code can be too lengthy for the page to download in a reasonable set of time. Now, when we want to manage our website links, we want to do this because the World Wide Web changes constantly. Websites might be up one day and then down the next, and if a website changes or goes down due to technical difficulties or a power failure, the links to it will become broken. And broken links like misspelled words on a web page indicate the website is not being maintained diligently. So by checking our links to make sure they work, this is an ongoing and crucial task you need to perform on a regular basis. You must check your external links manually by reviewing your website in a browser and then making sure that each link works correctly. If you use the checked link site-wide feature, that can be a helpful tool for managing your internal links. And you can use it to check your entire website for the total number of links and the number of links that are broken, external, or orphaned, and then view the results in the link checker panel. Orphaned files are files that are not linked to any pages in your website. As you work on the navigation structure for the website, you should try to limit the number of links on each page to no more than are necessary, because too many links are going to confuse the users of your website. You should also design your links so that users can reach the information that they want within a few clicks. The term Web 2.0 describes the evolution of web applications that facilitate and promote information sharing among Internet users. These applications not only reside on computers, but on cell phones, cars, portable GPS devices, and in-game systems. GPS refers to Global Positioning System, and these are devices that are used to track your position through a global satellite navigation, and they're popular for driving directions, hiking, and map making. Web 2.0 applications do not simply display information for users to read passively, they allow users to actively contribute to the content. RSS feeds, which stands for Really Simple Syndication, websites use RSS feeds to distribute news stories, information about upcoming events, and announcements. Web users can subscribe to RSS feeds to receive regular releases of information from a site. Users can also download and play these digitally broadcast files called podcasts using devices such as computers or MP3s. And if it's a video, then they refer to as a vodcast or vidcast. Web 2.0 also includes social networking, and that refers to any web-based service that facilitates social interaction among its users. These sites allow users to set up a profile page and then post information on them for others to view. A wiki is another example of a 2.0 application, and a good example of this is Wikipedia. This is just an online encyclopedia that allows users to post new information and edit existing information on any topic. Blogs are also an example, and these are websites where the website owner regularly posts commentaries and opinions on various topics. Content can consist of text, video, or images, and users can respond to the postings and read postings by other users. There are many video sharing applications out there such as Skype, Google Video, and all of these are free applications that you can use to communicate live with other people through video conferencing using a high-speed internet connection and a web camera. YouTube is a website where you can upload and share videos, and to upload videos, you need to register with the site. So these various 2.0 components can engage their users in one or more of these applications. So what you want to do is register to set up an account on the social networking site and then place a link on one of these sites on your web page, usually your homepage. These links are going to go out to the social networking site. And for example, if your Twitter account is located at twitter.com/your name, the link to your homepage using the Twitter logo as a graphic link will take them to your Twitter homepage. You can download social networking site logos from their websites, and some applications will specify on how you should refer to and link to their site. Using the applications that are part of Web 2.0 with your website can bring the site away from simply presenting information on pages for users to read, facilitating a compelling dialogue between the users and the site. They're no longer going to just be users, but they're going to be active participants. Web 3.0 will be the next generation of the web, and with that, browsers will be able to handle multiple searches simultaneously. Div tags are HTML tags that define how areas of content are formatted or positioned on a web page. For example, when you center an image on a page or inside of a table cell, Dreamweaver will automatically insert a div tag into the HTML code. In addition to using div tags to align page elements, designers also use them to assign background colors or borders to content blocks, to CSS styles, and to many other properties or page elements. One type of div tag is what we call an AP div tag. AP stands for absolute position. So an AP div tag creates a container that has a specified or fixed position on a web page. The resulting container that an AP div tag creates on a page is called an AP element. Because building a web page using div tags can be tedious for beginning designers, Dreamweaver CS6 provides 18 pre-designed layouts that are available in the new document dialog box. Also in CS6 are two HTML5 layouts. These give you the option of creating HTML pages based on either the 2-column or 3-column layout. They include new HTML tags to support semantic markups such as section, header, footer, article, and aside. You can use these layouts to create web pages with attractive and consistent layouts. There are two types of CSS layouts, fixed and liquid. A fixed layout will express all the widths and pixels and will remain the size regardless of the size of the browser window, whereas a liquid layout will express all widths and percents and changes the size depending on the size of the browser window. Now, pre-designed CSS layouts contain div tags that control the placement of the page content using placeholders, and each div tag container will have placeholder text that appears until you replace it with your own content. Because div tags use CSS for formatting and positioning, designers prefer them for building web page content. Now, tables are placeholders made up of small boxes called cells, and cells are arranged horizontally in rows and vertically in columns. By using tables on our web page, we can control the placement of each object on the page, similar to the way that the CSS blocks will control our placement. When we use the Dreamweaver pre-designed layouts, we can be sure that the pages will appear with consistent design, and we can create dynamic div tags using JavaScript behaviors or simple action scripts that will let us incorporate interactivity by modifying the content based on variables like the user's actions. When we design the web page layout using these, we can see and adjust the CSS content block. And in Design View, we can position it using the div tag using a dotted border as shown in Figure 2 on 6.5 or in the Visual Aid List in the View menu. You can display selected features of the div tag elements such as the CSS layout backgrounds, CSS layout box model, CSS layout outlines, and the AP element outline. And the CSS layout box model will display the padding and the margins of the blocks document. To align a table on a page or within a CSS layout block, you can use the flow property in the box category of your CSS. A table placed inside another table is called a nested table, and cell padding is the distance between the cell content and the cell wall, the lines inside the cell borders. Cell spacing is the distance between the cells, and neither cell padding or cell spacing is supported in HTML5, so it's better to address these spacing issues by assigning styles. Before you create a table, you should include in your wireframe a plan for it that shows its location on the page and the placement of the text and graphics in its cells. You should also decide whether to include borders around the tables. Setting the border value to 0 will cause the table borders to be invisible, and users will not realize it used a table unless they look at your code. One of Dreamweaver's most powerful features is what we call WYSIWYG, and that's the acronym for What You See is What You Get. Basically what this means is that as you design your page, you're going to see the same thing in the browser as you would in the web editor. So it's easier for you to place and design your web page in a way that your users are going to be able to see it. A table caption is also one of those accessibility features that we use, and it's at the top of a table to describe the contents. Headers are another way to provide information about the table content, and that's going to be viewable and in bold for the user. They can be placed at the top of the column, and they're automatically centered and used by screen readers to help identify the contents of the table. Captions and headers are created with the table dialog box. When you want to create an HTML5 compliant table, you should resize your tables, rows, and cells using cascading style sheets or CSS. If you only have one table in your site, you can modify it using the table tag. But if you have multiple tables, you can create a new class rule for each table and format each individually using the class rule properties. This will allow you to use multiple tables with differing widths, and when you first create a table, the columns will be created with equal widths. To widen these columns and meet HTML5 standards, you're going to want to use the column group tag, or COL group, to set the properties for an entire column, or the column tag, COL, to set the properties for the individual cells. Sometimes you'll want to adjust the cells in a table by splitting or merging them. To split a cell means to divide it into multiple rows or columns, and to merge a cell means to combine it into multiple cells into one cell. Using split and merged cells give you more flexibility and control in placing your page elements in the table and can help you to create a more visually exciting layout. When you merge cells, the HTML tag used to describe the merged cell changes from a width size tag to a column span or row span tag. For example, TD column span equals 2 would be the code for 2 cells that have been merged into one cell that spans 2 columns. As you add new content to your table, you might find that you have too many or too few rows and columns, and you can add or delete one row or column at a time or several at once. You can use commands on the Modify menu to add and delete table rows and columns, and when you add a new column or row, you must first select the existing column or row to which the new one will be adjacent. The Insert Rows or Column dialog box will let you choose how many rows or columns you want to insert or delete and where you want them placed in relation to the selected row. After you have split and merged cells, it can be challenging to add or delete rows. So you want to use the shortcut menu and add and delete the rows this way. You can also insert images into the cells of a table using the image command in the Images menu on the Insert panel or by dragging and dropping it into the cell that you want. When you add a large image to a cell, the cell will expand to accommodate the inserted image. An example of this is seen here, where we dragged and dropped the image of the tiramisu chocolate cake into the Sand Crab Cafe table. If you select the Show attributes when inserting the Images checkbox in the Accessibility category of the Preferences dialog box, the image tag accessibility attributes will open after you insert an image, prompting you to enter the alternative text. You can align these images in a table using the image command, or if you already have the images saved in your website and you would like to insert in a table, you can drag them from the Assets panel to the table cell. Now the images will be aligned both horizontally and vertically within the cell. And with HTML5, it's best to align the image, creating a rule with alignment settings, and then apply that rule to the image content. So for example, if you've inserted an image in a table cell, you can create a class rule in your style sheet called something like image table cell. And then that will assign a center align property to the rule. After you save the rule, you're going to select the image and then apply the image table cell rule to it. It will then center align itself within that table cell. Another way to align content in table cells is using the HTML5 compliant style for the cell tag that sets the cell alignment. So in this case, what you would do is add the code style equals text hyphen align center to the cell tag for the cell that you want to modify in order to center the contents. To help you position your page content, the View menu will offer grids and guides. Grids provide a graph paper-like view of your page. Horizontal and vertical lines will fill the page when this option is turned on. And you can edit the line colors, the distance between them, and whether they are comprised of lines or dots, and whether or not your objects snap to them. Guides are horizontal or vertical lines that you drag onto the page from the rulers, and you can edit both the colors of the guides and the color of the distance, a feature which will show you the distance between the two guides. You can lock the guides so that you don't accidentally move them, and you can set them to either snap to page elements or have elements snap to them to display the grid or the guide. You want to click on the view on the menu bar, point to grid, and then click Show Grid, or point to Guides and then click Show Guides. Once you place the text in a table cell, you can format it to make it more readable and visually appealing. But if it contains multiple objects of the same type, you can format each one using CSS rules. Now, div tags are used to format blocks of content similar to the way that the P tag is used to format paragraphs of text. But div tags are more flexible because they can act as containers for any type of block content. They are convenient for centering content on a page or applying a color to an area of a web page, and they combine easily with CSS for formatting and positioning. Although you can set some table and cell properties using the Property Inspector, you really want to stick to CSS styles for all your formatting tasks. This is because formatting a cell is different than formatting the cell's contents. Formatting a cell can include setting the properties that will visually enhance the appearance, such as setting the width and assigning a background color. But to format the cell with a code that is HTML5 compliant, you want to use tags to define the column group style, like column group, which will format all cells in that particular column. You can import and export tabular data in and out of Dreamweaver. And you can also format the contents of the cell. For example, you can select an image in a cell and then add properties such as font, font size, background color using a class rule. Or you can select the text in a cell and use the block quote or remove block quote buttons in the HTML Property Inspector to move the text farther away or closer to the cell walls. If a cell contains multiple objects of the same type, format each one of these using CSS rules for each one. Next, we're going to talk about managing your web server. As you add pages, links, and content to a website, it can quickly become difficult to manage. It's easier to find and correct errors as you go, rather than waiting until the end of the design phase. It's really important to perform maintenance tasks frequently to make sure that your website operates smoothly and remains clean. You've already learned about some of the tools described in the following paragraphs, but we're going to talk a little bit more about them so that you can use them as you create and modify your pages. And then it's also important to run them at periodic intervals after publishing your website to make sure that it's always error-free. You should use the Assets panel to check the list of images and colors used in your website. And if you see any images that are not being used, you should move them to a storage folder outside of your root site folder until you need them. You should also make note of any non-web safe colors. Like we said before, this is much less of an issue today than in the past, but it doesn't hurt to evaluate any non-web safe colors you find to determine whether a slight variation could make it web safe. You also want to check your links site-wide. Before and after you publish your website, you need to use the link checker panel to make sure that all your internal links are working. If the link checker panel displays any broken links, you want to repair them. And then if it displays any orphaned files, you want to evaluate whether to delete them or link them with existing pages. To delete a file that you decide not to use, select it in the Files panel and then press Delete, or right-click the file, click Edit, and then click Delete. You should also check all the external links by testing them in a browser to make sure that the links find the intended website. You can also use the Reports command in the site menu to generate 5 different kinds of HTML reports that will help you maintain your website. The link checker is just one of these reports. Another one is to specify whether to generate for a current document, the entire current local site, or your selected files on the site. And as you can see here, you can generate workflow reports to see files that have been checked out by others or recently modified files. You can also view the design notes that are attached to these files. If while you're testing you find any page that downloads slowly, you want to try to reduce the size to improve the performance. You can do this through optimizing your graphics, cropping or resizing your images, reducing the number of media files, or streamlining your page code. As part of your ongoing site testing, you should present the web pages at strategic times in the developmental process to your team members and your clients for feedback and evaluation. When you publish your website, we use what's called a web server, and this is simply a computer with software that enables it to host websites, and it's connected to the internet with an IP or Internet Protocol address so that it's available on the net. Before you can publish a site to a web server, you must first define the remote site by specifying the server settings in your Site Setup dialog box. You can set up a server for testing purposes and a server for the live website, but most people just use one for both. The most common connection setting is what we call FTP, or File Transfer Protocol. If you choose FTP, you will have to specify a server address and a folder name on the FTP site where you want to store your site root folder. You can also use what we call SFTP, and that's Secure FTP, on an FTP option which will let you encrypt the file transfers and protect your files. This is what the server dialog box looks like in your site settings. You can see that we have the server name. This is just the familiar name that you're going to use as the web designer to make your server identifiable. Next, you're going to either choose FTP or SFTP. You're going to put the address, the port, and then you're going to have a username and a password. Most root directories are set as home, but if your FTP site has something else, you may have to put your root directory at a level below that. And then underneath that, you have your URL, which is the full website address. Once you have set up your remote server, you can then view your remote folder in the Files panel by choosing Remote View from your view list on your file pane. If your remote site is located on an FTP server, Dreamweaver can connect to it. And after you set up your remote site, you need to upload, or in other words, copy all your files from your local version of your site to the remote host. If a file you select for uploading requires additional files such as graphics, a dialog box will open after you click the Put File button and ask if you want to put dependent files. If you're developing or maintaining a website in a group environment, there might be times when you want to transfer or download files that the other team members have created from the remote site to your local site. We do this through what we call the synchronize command, and that tells Dreamweaver to compare the dates of saved files in both versions of the site, and then we'll only transfer copies of the newest ones. When you work on a large website, chances are that many people will be involved in keeping the site up to date, and different individuals will need to make changes or additions to different pages. So by checking files in and out, you can basically contain the version of it and make sure that nobody is overriding each other's work. Using Dreamweaver's checkout feature ensures that team members can't overwrite others' pages. When this feature is enabled, only one person can work on a file at a time, and when it's checked in, you can't make edits to it unless you check it out again. Another file management tool is what we call subversion control. A remote SVN repository is used to maintain current and historical versions of your website. There may be times when you want to exclude a particular file from being uploaded to a server, and you can exclude these files by cloaking them, which will mark them for exclusion from several commands. In addition to cloaking a file or group of files, you might also want to cloak an entire folder. For example, if you're not concerned with replacing outdated image files, you might want to cloak the assets folder of a website to save time when you're synchronizing. When you move a site, you need to move the site definition. That's going to contain important information about the site, including its URL, preferences that you've specified, and other secure information. If you want to be able to access the site settings in a website that someone else has created, you can import the site definition file once you have the necessary .ste extension. The last bit of this is evaluating web content for legal use. Intellectual property is a product resulting from human creativity, and it can include inventions, movies, songs, designs, clothing, and so on. Copyright will protect the particular intangible expression of an idea, but not the idea itself. So a copyright owner has a bundle of 6 rights: reproduction, including downloading, creation of a derivative work, for example, a movie version of a book, distribution to the public, public performance, public display, and public performance by digital audio transmission of a sound recording. Trademark protects an image, word, slogan, symbol, or design used to identify goods or services. The law builds in limitations to use copyrights, and one limitation is what we call fair use. This allows limited use of copyright-protected work. Work that's no longer protected by copyright is in the public domain, and anyone can use it however you wish for any purpose. But in general, the photos and other media on federal government websites are in the public domain, whereas a licensing agreement is a permission given by a copyright holder that conveys the right to use copyright holder's work under certain conditions. Websites have rules that govern how users may use its text and media, known as the terms of use.